Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
Like Hollow, 48, my whole top. Go to the Feet of the Ground Radio. Tuesday, you know what it's doing. They're checking it all up nice. We'll set it all properly. Praising that Turner, glory to Garvey. Long as the Spirit is Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Praise Harriet Tubman. Glory to Ivy Wells, and long as the Spirit is Sister Karen Hamer. Going on out there tonight, family. You know, it's normally news, and more news. Tonight, though, we're dealing with a topic, the new black neo-colonialists, and whether or not science and racism can be separated. This discussion is going to be, it's decision upon several weeks, several of the past weeks, listening to different shows, things going on in the community. We just had a conversation on Hangout yesterday in regards to evolution, Darwinism, social Darwinism, and just the understanding of the extremes that the European will go to in order to hold science with his rhetoric and thought and perspective. So tonight we're going to deal with some of the social constructs that have been created through what people deem as pseudo, but this is social science. We're going to deal with social sciences that have been constructed around racism, white supremacy. So we're dealing with some social constructs that were created within inside of the science community. Definitely fasten your seatbelt, hold your hat. You know what I mean? It'll be definitely a wonderful show. Seeing family be in there. We're soon waiting for my co-host to come on in and join us on the line. Trying to get this theme music pumped up for y'all real quick. I gotta go back and get this other computer right. But as I was saying, though, the show is predicated upon several conversations that have been had, and just looking into what we call what is being dubbed as passive community, looking at it and seeing whether or not, we see that there's not a lot of investment in the study of social construct there's not a lot of let me see. It's not a. We see that our people have not taken the time to evaluate science as it has been given to us as today, and the science that is given to us today has now become religious. Is religious codified? You understand? And anytime something can be taken in there and place it in a place to say, listen, it's unquestionable, then it has turned religious. Anything that is unquestionable is religious by nature. This is Eurocentric thinking. Things that cannot be questioned. We are inquisitive people, so we must question things at all times. And beyond that, we have reason to not trust the Europeans. We have reason not to trust the Tamahu. We have reason not to trust that genetic percentage of them that is different enough to create a social construct such as racism, white supremacy. So we're going to deal with that tonight. So, family, I know y'all going to have fun. You know what I mean? We want to have a good conversation. Let everybody get in. Let me see how I'm going to do this right here. Let me see. Governor Nicarag, you out there? Hold on. About that, family. I know it's just muted by accident. It's rough. F.O.G, Black Power. I know the student will be in a second. But I was saying, that's what we're going to be dealing with tonight. We're going to be dealing with the mannerism of what our people are now taking in colonialist information and regurgitating it in a mannerism to have us exposed to the worst of scientific theory. This is becoming something that we just, we have to make sure that we, this is number one thing. We have to make sure that we question. People think it's disingenuous to question, then I find that that's a problem. But we must question all things that are given to us, especially if we are people who have only recaptured the ability to want to think for ourselves. We're just now recapturing this. We've been through some traumatic times. And with that being said, I always enjoy, just the ability to think on my own. I enjoy that. I feel that it is a good thing for the African to utilize observation and intuition to come to some conclusions about things. We're having a lot of people, they ask the question, well, if you say that we don't come from monkeys, what do we come from? And then if you don't have you don't come up with a seemingly cogent answer, saying that you must be delving into pseudoness. When I discuss these type of things and I say I do not agree with them, I'm not here to have another, a totally different way of how we came about. I'll have to say that I really don't know right now because we haven't been given all the proper information, and I was not there to see what happened, as no one else was there to make observations on this thing. You know what I mean? So I can go with that. I can deal with I don't know right now. You know what I'm saying? But me not knowing does not stop me from having the ability to ask a question about things that you say you know. If you say you know, answer the question. And that's how I look at this thing right here. Let me see here. Let me get this stuff together. So, let me get that one right. All right. Let's see. All right. But yeah, and also, before we go on, I know we did it last Saturday, but let me see if the brothers out there right now. Brother Nicaragua, you out there?
Yes, sir. Black Power, brother.
Black This is 48.
48, brother.
Yeah, before we move totally forward, we did send our love out to you, but we'd like to make sure that we send our love out while you're on the line, putting that work in and putting another credible African scientist out in the field.
I would like to thank my media group, my family. You know what I'm saying? I would like to thank my peer African is on the line tonight. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to thank you, Brother Bourne. I'd like to thank Brother Head Rule, Brother Little, Sister Camille, Brother Carls, all the listeners and so forth, to be able to, it's one thing to, oftentimes in American society, you walk around like you crazy when you come to certain conclusions. So when you're able to make certain conclusions with a certain group of people, you don't feel as crazy. I'm not the only motherfucker seeing this shit. So, when you got that kind of support behind you, you know what I'm saying, you just going to push forward, you know what I mean, because it's in light of something bigger than you. So, all praise to, to the ancestors and really to my peer colleagues and whatnot, family.
That's great. And for the family, we like to, we accept that. We thank you very much for that. for those kudos. And I'm telling you, it's all hats off to you today. You know what I mean? It's all hats off to you. And as you said, this is the spirit of the ancestors moving through us to get to that proper evaluation of information. We came up with a term once upon a time. When we started to utilize a term that was brought to us by Dr. Walter Wade. And we started calling the people the Malchites. And these were the turncoats. We started calling them Malchites, but now it seems that it is turned to something different. So, I was speaking to the people on the application of the term, the new black neo-colonialism. And, if you could you speak to that, Tim?
Yes, sir. First off, I think it's important to give some definitions in line so we all on the same accord. We know what colonialists are. Colonialist settlers semantics. We're talking about Europeans who are out of Europe with the intention of expanding the Anglo-Saxon Empire. When we say neo-colonialists, one of the main tools Europeans used was infiltration. There's never been an upfront direct contact with the European and no type of real warfare. Only the last one I would give them credit for was upfront was World War I, World War II. And that was because there was another European attacking another European. But even then, it was still some shady shit. So there's always been infiltration. Two things have always been in the mechanisms. Dr. Clark spoke upon this. He kept seeing reoccurring themes in history. In history pertaining to European colonialism. Dr. Clark, he would threaten to write in this book. He called it The Role of the Bastard as a Factor in History, as his title. And he went in and he said how Europeans, oftentimes, whenever they came in contact with a new people, they used subversion and dominated the people, killed off the males, and oftentimes wanted the young. One of the new young that was bastardized by them raping the native women. History has shown, like Dr. Clark said, that the bastard who's half native, half cracker, meaning his daddy's a cracker, has always sided with the father who is in power. Always. And when we look at one of the first people to experience this type of treatment in the New World, when we talk about the New World, we're talking about America. And that's, I think that's what we're going to stay in today because we're in America. So in America, racism has always been there. It's going to touch every totality of the society. So when they were colonizing Native Americans, they were forcing them through treaties and through some subversive-ass politics to attend boarding schools. These boarding schools wanted the Native Americans at a very young age. They made them cut their hair. This is a Catholic church now, a Catholic boarding school running this. The white nuns, women, would punish these Native American children for speaking Nawa, the native language. In doing so, they would educate them until they would reach about puberty. And then when they reached puberty, they just couldn't do nothing with them. So they sent them back to their people. And when they sent them back to the Native American people, because they had their haircuts, because they wore jeans, because they spoke English, because they were Christians, because they were westernized, they became neo-colonialists and went inward on many societies, because history has said that they've always had a sympathetic attachment because the European, at the age of puberty, just don't give them no real legitimate reason why they're being put in exile by being sent back to their people. But he does so the Native American child in adolescence always is left with a void. Why did they send me back? What did I do wrong? And by doing so, they end up feeding and serving the power structure. They become spies for Europeans. This is the context. So when it comes to Native Americans and Europeans in America, and when it comes to their schools, Native Americans have tried to bounce back, and oftentimes they bounce back by making sure that their children had a full knowledge of Native Americans' history to give them a full knowledge of self, so that when they did attend European schools, they went there with an ulterior motive other than trying to be or integrate or assimilate to being a European. This same nonsense, now that we've defined what a neo-colonialist is, this same nonsense has always been pertinent in our society. We're talking about black people in America. Because the divide and conquer mechanism has never been stronger anywhere in America, and no group has suffered more than of black people. So when we look at every facet of history in America, in social change there's been revolution. In revolution there's been a contention. Malcolm X summed it up, but we know it very well. The house nigga and the field nigga mentality. In 2015, we have a large contingency, a large number of individuals who want to identify themselves or try to identify themselves with the most left movement, the most rebellious movement. Individuals that's on this talk show right now, right? But in doing so, they often use science as a medium. And in this medium, these motherfuckers, because I don't want to sound too crackerish, these motherfuckers is basically saying that there ain't no racism in science. Now, we know that the European has a science for everything. And what they niggas do is, these niggas be taking debates and lectures with handicapped people and bragging about being a champion. But when it comes to people who know how to read, know how to question a little bit, they duck and they dodge.
Or turn to slander.
Or turn to slander, exactly. But all of them seem to have one thing in common. Amos Wilson spoke on it, and I want to cite my work today, because this is not just the rants of a man. This shit has already been documented and it's been spoken in the black community. Amos Wilson's The Falsification of the Black Consciousness. Throughout, I'm just giving an opening right now, Brother Braun, but as we go out throughout the show, if anybody have their book open, we need to touch on some of these subjects. Because what's happening is that these individuals are running from reality. And the reality is what in America? Racism touches every facet of life. It is racist to the core. Everything about American society is racist. There are no isolates. There are no individual concepts that are just, everything it touches is racist. Because its foundational creation was that of racism. Cataloging. So much there's even a term called scientific racism, which really stemmed from social Darwinism. Social Darwinism is social evolution. Evolution has never been confirmed through scientific testing as actually existing. It's what scientists call an ongoing theory. Social evolution, though, can be achieved because it can be manipulated through synthetic means. So Europeans say that they evolved. You have to know a little bit about their science and their theory. First off, if we know genetically that he's recessive, and then me and you are dominant, how did he evolve? Because natural selection dictates that. What am I saying when I say natural selection? Nature. I don't give a fuck how much dominant genes your ass have. The nature of the environment that you're in dictates your condition. Look at black people right now throughout America. We have the biological potential to be geniuses, but because of the environment that we're in, we get caught up by all this shit. an environment that is not natural, first off. An environment, the reason why we're so caught up by it is because here we are, the oldest people on the planet. And our history and our genes have shown we've been able to adjust to all type of situations. But the hardest one is the unreal one. When the European came to America, this is the first time that they've had free land. When I say that, meaning free opportunity to put in place this racist theory. They had to convince the natives that they were savages and that they were there in divine inspiration to lead these people and to civilize these people. But as long as the Native American, as long as the Native Chinaman, as long as the Native African, as long as the Native human being is in nature, he is in his natural habitat, that means he is at an advantage. So you have to get them out of their natural habitat. You have to put them in a concrete jungle. The concrete jungle serves as what? What do fucking psychologists say? See, first off, let's get to information, education. And how is it defined from a European's perspective? They weaponize everything. Everything is weaponized. So this hierarchy or this theory of racism, this scientific racism, is even weaponized. You see the first armed regiment of this new science being armed and weaponized in the form of eugenics. Now I'm giving a brief overview, Brother B. Well, this is basically what I mean when I say neo-colonialism. When you have individuals, the neo-colonialists, we have to put the black neo-colonialists, because neo-colonialists are any faction that are non-European, meaning they're not the dominant, they're not racially connected to the people in power. But they represent, defend, and protect the aspirations of the ones in power, whether willingly or unwillingly, or knowing or unknowing. But you can hear about how they talk, what they choose to defend. I don't think, I want other people to get into this discussion. But this is the definition of a neo-colonialist. Okay? And these niggas is putting science as the base for all things and saying, the only reason you're complaining is because he's a white scientist. You're damn right. Because racism in America is the filter. It's the filter for every interpretation on everything. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brother D.
Nah, I'm listening, man. I'm sitting back, and I'm glad that you gave that nice brief overview. And the line's starting to fill up. I see our family out there. Well, one thing that I like to mention along with what you're saying about the filter is that's where we really have to make sure that that's the thing that we stay on, is that all things, regardless of the science, all things are filtered through the European racism, white supremacist system. There is not one field of activity that they do not filter their total frame of thought through that mind state. Well, Black Power, is that the comedian out there? Yes, that's right.
Black Power, BB F.O.G. Black Power to you, Captain Africa. Way to set the tone.
Black Power, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing blacktastic. I'm just ecstatic that you're having this discussion, that the family's having this discussion. Enough is enough. We have a right to question anything the Cracker Beast puts in front of us. I'm glad you're dealing also with Dr. Amos' work, the falsifications of African consciousness, because that's exactly what he is calling for. He's saying that everything they touch from a racist ideology. It is to keep us permanent mental slaves.
That's right. And one thing, I'd like to also say, Black Power, what's going on out there, the brother Ryan Group? I know he out there because to be in a second. But, you know, this all come about through listening to our peers, you know, people who are in the, you know, who do some of the same things that we do, you know, they're on this medium, they're on the media, they're utilizing the radio waves to bring forth ideas, and it seems that it's not the methodology that we have that is flawed. It seems that what the problem is that people are having a problem with information being questioned, you know, from an African perspective. You know, it was once upon a time that all things had to be filtered. You know, I would say 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, everything had to be filtered through the African lens, period. There was no break on that. The white man was the devil. Everything he said was a lie. Now it seems a couple of years later, the white man is no longer the devil. The white man is God now. His science is supreme, that it cannot be questioned unless you are academically astute enough to question his information. And no one is academically astute enough to question his information unless you have a dissertation and a scholastic paper written up and co-signed by the rest of the goddamn Jewish academic mafia, as Dr. Clark referred to it as. So, you know, this is the problem that we have. And so I'm definitely glad we get into it. It was bound to happen. It's bound to happen. So, you know, we'll find out whether or not people are going to stand on that front line, you know what I mean, or whether or not you're going to get gunned down with this the madness to the white man running through your goddamn brains. We see you, niggas. We see you. Your curl got a little too much juice in it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, for example, a lot of people gravitating to same information, and that's fine. But some information is more pertinent to others and not to some, you know, to other individuals. Like Amos Wilson said, it's not a good idea for black people to get caught up, for example, in conspiracy theories. We need to assess ourselves as a nation and judge individuals in terms of capability and intent. Are they capable of doing it, and do they have intentions of making it happen? Even in European society and structure, they pick and choose to some extent what you should be angry about and what you should praise. Oftentimes it's best when it's inward towards your own people. This is the psychological espionage that's done by neocolonialists. The neocolonialists will not properly assess the political, military overview of what happened, for example, with the shooting at the AME church. No one even assesses why that church was picked. The question is, if this wasn't an individual cracker who was pissed off, but he put a nice link in there and showed that this motherfucker is ex-military. Now, in 2015, what we need to be assessing is that there are two groups that are in power right now. One is losing power, one is gaining power. Money ain't got nothing to do with it. Your ass is either military or civilian in 2015. That's what it's coming down to. In defense of what? I don't know what's going on right now. Europeans are not multiplying. I'm digressing, but I'm just, they are in power, and they are not having babies. This is what I'm saying. Let's put the money's an illusion, so let's put that out the window. Nature don't calculate money. Nature only maximizes the fitness of an allele, meaning nature's only going to put everything in your favor to reproduce. Black people seem to be reproducing. White folks ain't reproducing, yet they're in power. Interesting. So what they're doing right now, they're practicing survival, man. Nature is not on their side at all. So everything that they seem to fear, it's like we the daywalkers around this motherfucker on some blaze shit. But getting back to the, I'm digressing. Let's get back to the neo-colonialists, the black neo-colonialists. Here it is, you have a Negro defend a goddamn theory and have a fucking convention on the theory that this nigga ain't even fully encompassed yet. Arrogance and ego don't mix. No, arrogance and ignorance don't mix.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say that shit again. This nigga, you have individuals who are trying to convince you and I to pull in our economy and support this convention. And let's just say the money gets put there. We're going to get robbed because these niggas ain't even qualified to even take care of the subject.
Yeah, and that's very important that you stating that, Mr. Ron. Look, man, you just can't throw good money after bad money, man. We can't keep doing this shit. We can't. And this is how we know we're dealing with people who don't have the African got them really at heart and in mind. Because even the theme of said debate and things of that nature are even themes in a mannerism that is unfruitful. There's nothing to be gained as a nation once you finish this. You can't, and as you said, there's no qualification. I'm wondering, how can you invest in debating a topic where there is no right answer anyway on either side, because both sides are still dealing with conjecture because none was there to see this opening act.
That's suspect, Brother B. That's suspect. See, the neo-colonialist doesn't know originality. Everything must be handed to them by the one in power, even innovation. For example, niggas are close to college. I don't give a fuck what you say. Every year, somebody black is graduating from the university. You can't be talking about nation building if you ain't even acknowledging the younger generation. I'm talking about Sonetta now. I got name names. Now, I've heard that, I've never been to Harlem, but I heard Harlem has experienced gentrification. So there's a lot of college students down there. Some white, some black. Now, why do you need top-tier students when you got college students who are $1,000 in debt and who would love to be praised and acknowledged? I know at least somebody from the New York University, whether it be City College or somewhere, graduated from in some kind of Black history studies, and they can go in on some subjects that these individuals don't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
I even gave one of my dudes. It's about knowing resources, how to use them. One of my dudes, he wanted to rap. He wanted to do a music video. I said, take your ass to the college, man, and go find one of them little production students and so forth who's looking for some editing. Go smoke a blunt with that nigga and go buy him some footage.
And you know what I'm saying? You better fuck around and get your shit for free. You gotta know how to push the resources together. You see what I'm saying? But if you use the same, see, America is one of innovation, so ain't no book to innovation. You either have it or you don't. So by them trying to tell us to send more money, they're trying to buy innovation. So they can get some quote top tier individuals. Now I'll tell you one thing, these individuals at first wasn't charging that much money. And but now they see us with the medium, so they know we capable of producing it. But like I said, it ain't gonna be motherfuckers qualified. Because the rubrics on what qualifications has changed. It's sad, but it's changed. You got a whole generation of youth and motherfuckers ain't even acknowledging. You were right there. That nigga, all he got to do is go take a shot on that TV and go to the college campus up there. Yeah, he's going to find some people who find some youngsters up there depressed like a motherfucker. Because they know they ain't going to get no acknowledgement. And the little acknowledgement they do, they're going to come from a short list of few. Mm-hmm. And they going to get insight because they don't know exactly what they're going through. So, these niggas ain't in the streets. These niggas ain't in the neighborhoods. These niggas, Sheikh Knight said it oftentimes, it ain't black and white, it's old and young. And I see a lot of these old niggas. I mean, I'm even listening to Lil Wayne with my little youngster, right? Lil Wayne, we think these youngsters think the motherfucking Bible's a comic book, nigga. Exactly. We've come into a sort of elitism that has come about on us. You know what I mean? And I noticed that it's elitism, right? And I say that it's elitism because, I was told myself that I didn't have right to question. Somebody, who am I calling somebody?
Go call somebody who qualified. Go call them. Call them up.
Shay.
Let them know, make around the house. Let them know. Call it whatever the fuck you want to call up and tell them come on in.
Yeah, listen, man. So, like I said, we're dealing with social elitism. We're dealing with, the type of conscious elitism. Because I was told myself that I wasn't credentialed enough to ask questions of the scientific community, right? And I don't have a degree. I've spent 14 years in school, 2 years on the college level, seeking a degree in sociology. That's what I was seeking. You know what I mean? I originally started off seeking a law degree and then changed it over. But still, regardless of that, I was told by people who I was told that I couldn't ask questions, but Negroes would have motherfuckers on the panel who ain't even finished high school. Now, not to say that having a high school diploma makes me somebody, but it was spoken to me as though because I didn't have proper college credentials that I couldn't critique scientific data properly. But we have this conference coming up, and we have high school dropouts. We have people with no credentials, never spent a day in city college, let alone in a university. You know what I'm saying? But all of these are qualified because they all sit on the couch together. And this is what I mean, there's some type of elitism going on. I'm very disturbed at this situation right here, how it's going down. It's definitely something to be held and seen. So I'm seeing the social elitism going on. And so when you say that we're having a new neo-black colonialist, I see that this is something else that they're doing, is they're creating the situation for us to, it's like the new TDJ. You know what I mean? It's like a new style of Creflo Dollar. A new type of, I ain't going to say Jim Jones where they might give us the Kool-Aid, but a new Farrakhan. It's like the new Milwaukee, a new Malachi Z. York shit. Bringing people into a situation where you can't question the situation. You only can get what we say And that's it. And what we say is the bottom line. And I'm very disturbed at that. And I'm not going to trust nobody who's telling me no shit like that. Like, you can't question crackers and I can't question crackers all because I got some type of fucking, I got something against them. And I'm wondering how the fuck is you telling me as an African descendant man, that you don't have anything against the beast, the tribe, whatever the fuck you want to call it. How you have nothing against him? No, there's nothing in your mind that say, I need to question what he's saying. This motherfucker's been that good to you that you look at him as though he is unquestionable, or is he that scared? Now I got to start thinking, the motherfucker might be scared to death.
I know that's right, brother B. You're damn right.
But I like to everybody know. I just want to acknowledge everybody in the room real quick, brother Nick. You go ahead and go. I want Black Power, everybody in the room. The lines is open. We're dealing with the new black neo-colonialists and whether or not science and racism can be separated. So you come on in with questions or comments, but please do it respectfully. Black Power.
Black Power, everyone. I didn't want to just cut in on nobody. I came in when the brother was, this is Sister Kaba Nebida, Black Power and peace and love to all of you all. I came in when the brother was saying ignorance and arrogance don't mix. That couldn't have been the truest statement right there. I mean, I came in on some real good stuff right there, brother. You was really putting that out there. I'm not going to hold y'all up because I just came in. I missed 30 minutes. I'm sorry about that, Brother Bourne. I told you I was in like Slim, but I kind of got caught up in doing a few things. But it seemed like y'all got a good dialogue going on, so I'm going to just listen for a little while longer. I had myself on mute because I was moving around in the kitchen, but I'm listening in. How you doing, Sister Warrior Queen Camille? Much love to you, sister.
Black Power Queen, I'm Blacktastic, and much love to you, my fellow warrior queen. Hold it down.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Sister Kaba, thank you. Thank you for coming out, and you always got it. If you want to come in, just chime in, part yourself. Excuse me, I want to add on, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, I won't. I'm not the one to try to be disruptive. So when someone's speaking, I'm not trying to come in. You might hear me every now and again say, or something like that, a kind gesture. But just to come in and, just to be disruptive or obstructive, that's not the way that I roll. So I'm listening in. I thought the brother was putting some good information out there. I'm sorry that I came in so much later because I know it was good the first 30 minutes. But what I came in on was some very, that was some powerful stuff you was putting down, brother. I appreciate that. So I'm going to listen in for a minute.
All right. Well, Sister Camille, if you want to add on anything right now real quick.
Well, I think Captain Africa, I want to, first of all, thank my brother for putting me on adding to my study. And something that I heard that was disturbing from people that uphold Sheikh Anta Diop is to say that race don't exist, which he repudiates with science now in the civilization of barbarism. And as the dialogue goes along, I'm going to read some things out of that he deals with, and particularly how white cracker beast scientists use racial ideology in their interpretation of scientific data. Black Power.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what it is. They can't escape. We talking about in America now, because in America we're dealing with the worst Europeans. When we look at the expansion from the old world to the new world, the aristocrat Europeans in Western Europe, they didn't make that trip over here, and they weren't the ones who put in the work with murdering and committing genocide against Native Americans. It was the worst European. They did the same thing that Castro did to Miami. They flushed the toilets of Western Europe on America. So the Native Americans, they dealt with the worst European. I use the Native Americans because the Native American boarding schools shows more the truth. When you understand the Native American boarding schools, you understand why in 2015 Europeans want your child, why Angelina Jolie is adopting young African children. And once a lot of them been adopting African children, the thing we need to do is keep up with them. Notice that when they become adolescents, they all let them go. And they cause havoc on their own people. They go inward on their own people. You see what I'm saying? The European has never been an out open warfare on Africans because he knows once the African knows war has been declared in their parameters, we're going to adjust accordingly. They learned that through Shaka Zulu. The new neo-black colonialist is apologetic and is very defensive of the most concrete theories that Europeans hold dear. The minute that you speak truth in terms of anything, they attack before the European do.
Shay.
They become real defensive. You know what I mean? They become threatening. Then they come off as being very misleading. See, you got certain individuals. You can look like a genius when your circle of constituents are disabled. You bragging about beating up disabled people. You get around a motherfucker who knows what they're talking about. You slander, self-hate. So you have a lot of people who think that our ways are backwards and old. When we talk pro-African, they immediately think, well, nigga, stop driving the car. Stop watching TV, nigga. Right? And they only omit their self-hate. Because that's the same thing during slavery when the field nigga like, nigga, let's run away. He said, where else we gonna go that's better from here? Same thing. Same thing. Ain't no up, down, left, or right it's the same thing. And I can vouch for everybody on this line when I say I know what everybody on this line got two things in common. What they defend and what they attack is one and the same. I'm here because I defend the integrity and the contributions of African people, and I attack all Eurocentric information that goes against that. You have certain individuals who are quick to tell you and I what we need to be doing, what we don't be doing, but they don't have no creed or no code of conduct. They live by themselves that you can even speak to. They won't even tell you how old they are. Nobody won't even tell their real name. Mm-hmm. But they ain't African. And they know they can't survive without this white man. And when they do that, they confess their ignorance about but they don't know about their history.
Mm-hmm.
Brother Minkawa, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier how one of the things that the Cracker Beast had did with the natives here, was to take the half-breed and educate him. And then when he was done with him, to bring him back amongst his people, where instead of fighting on his mother's side, he fought on his father's side. He came back with that education and actually looked down on his people, took a position of superiority. Now, can the same thing be applied to those of us that are going to these universities, to their universities here in this country today?
Yes. See, the best way that it becomes successful is when they're young. It's a catch-22. Now, I have no problem with all people going to European schools, but it's the age in which we go to their schools. Elijah Muhammad spoke on this, and I see truth in everything. I'm able to, most niggas can't, I can pick up anything, get some information from it that's positive. So, when Elijah Muhammad said that, I understood what he meant, meaning before we send our children to their schools, whether it be at the age of 8 or 15, however long it takes for our children to be fully ingrained with what it is to be an African, what it is, and to be able to see them show positive self-esteem about being an African. You see what I'm saying? I didn't learn low self-esteem and racism until I went to school. What about you, Sister Camille?
Black power. I mean, you make me think of what I heard Dr. Clark say. The way to keep a people oppressed is to educate them. Now, we know from Dr. Amos Wilson's work, the indoctrination of self-hatred, the indoctrination process occurs through their educational system.
To give you a good visual, in the movie Malcolm X, I want to be a lawyer. And the cracker was like, no, you're colored. And this is used for getting. You do it with your hands. Jesus was a carpenter. You see what I'm saying? So they project certain things on us through a racist type of perspective, which really starts your growth back. You ain't you learn low self-esteem in school because a white teacher, is gonna tell you what you ain't good at, what you need to be doing. Like for example, when I was coming up, I liked to write. I wanted to be a cold-ass script writer. But now as an adult, when it comes to Europeans, I don't even like writing no more because I'm always told what I need to be changing about my writing, things of that nature. Feel me? Now imagine I went to education, African first, second, or third school, where I had queen teachers like yourself, Sister Camille, and other sisters on the line and so forth, that's going to embrace and encourage that type of writing and give me more aspect. You see what I'm saying? It's got a different effect. So even when you put white child and a black child in school, you're going to get different results. This is just common knowledge. Because they what that game was say. One is learning how to submit to power, and the other one is learning how to be in control and maintain power.
Shay.
That's a good question, Sister Camille.
That's the dilemma we're facing. We're being accused of hating science and hating higher education, and that's from the black neo-colonialists, because we are saying that our education should be from an African-centered perspective only. And we have a right to question all information that has been collected by the cracker beast starting at the time of our enslavement. When was Darwin books? When did Darwin come back? Where was our people in the 1800s? Huh?
They were in the field.
In the 1700s.
Yeah.
And then you have our own people downing us for us not putting a satellite up in space first. Well, shit. For 200 to 300 years, we was not allowed to read or write, while these motherfuckers was invading our lands, taking our scripts, our scrolls, and then using that as the basis through a white racist ideology to build what is known today as Western academia.
Well, I can speak to that because, I received an undergraduate, and I know that at that time, I was pretty aware. But I know that I had a family, I had other things that, you get caught into exactly what the web that you were born into, So working and things like that, so you look for a so-called advanced education. But throughout my tenure in that advanced education, I saw nothing but bias the entire time. I remember the professor would say to me that, I wrote with so much conviction. Well, that's because everything that I was reading was convicting to me. It never had anything to do with me. It never placed us. It never gave us a place, So I had to use my own common knowledge of self to place to put things in a proper perspective. And even when I did that, they'd be like, well, you know, we need you to cite the source on this or that. And these are, well, you want me to cite a source on things that you're not using as something that's peer-reviewed, you know, so you want me to look at it from your perspective. So, yes, sister, we have to look at it from an African perspective when we're teaching our children, because self-awareness and self-identity is going to be important. You know, it's imperative that we put that in their minds, because they are going to be faced with these standardized testings and all these things in their school system. And so their mind is just basically filled with white supremacist ideology the entire time. I mean, I was brought up in the public school system, so I know exactly what it is. There was nothing to tell me that I had a history. I didn't even think I had an ancestor, because you were telling me that you wanted to separate church and state, but you never did that. You made your church a part of your state. You know, you made it a part of your school system. You got me singing I Pledge Allegiance and everything else. So, absolutely, I mean, I think the number one thing that we're going to have to do going forward is to create our own educational systems for our children. And we're going to have to base their education in learning about our own history, because the history that they are learning is not our history. That's their story, and it's filled with a lot of our stories in which they've changed and rearranged to glorify themselves. So, yes, sister, Black Power.
Yes, ma'am. Now, when you even look at that, when you look at that, in 2015, we are still in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
If we know the history of Europeans, and we know that their power structure has always been dependent on the neocolonialists, whether it be the Latino neocolonialists, whether it be the black neocolonialists, right? Given the new lifestyle changes that they've been forcing on people, whether there's homosexual activity, the shootings of black churches, this is the best time to see how desperate they are for our children.
That's right.
By setting up the bait and saying, you know what, we're gonna fall back. You know, little man ain't going to school for till y'all get y'all shit together. And they start doing that. Even it's gonna be a front. Europeans gonna front it, but they gonna quickly make adjustments.
That's right.
Tone down. Just to show you how wicked the white man is. You know what I'm saying? And the only ones that can do this is strict parents. You know what I mean? Don't look at their children being at home as a burden. Who say, you know what? They need to be at home with all the shit that's going on. Because shit, I ain't gonna lie, a lot of dirt, a lot of negative influence I learned in society, I learned at school.
I agree with that totally. A lot of negativity that I got received right up out of that schoolhouse. It was not things that was implanted.
Nigga, I bought my first burner in the boys' bathroom at school. So you see what I'm saying? So a lot of shit you say when your young nigga from, you know, your young son from witnessing and learning, but like keeping them away from them schools and keeping them more refined and regimented in learning how to handle power that daddy or mama finna pass on to him. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, that's more beneficial than learning about Christopher Columbus and learning how savage you are, and then nigga, the only thing you're gonna get is a janitorial job in this. You see what I'm saying? See, I've seen little young niggas, man, 2, 3 years old, self-esteem level up. Little man talking good. Little man first putting himself low self-esteem, impressed when they go to school.
Absolutely. They teach us to hate one another in the school system. They put us, they do the same thing they do in society in the school system, because you have the mulatto factor that the sister was talking about, and they place them against you. The darker you are, the uglier you are. The lighter you are, what they would call a quote-unquote red bone, you know, the prettier you were. So you would put us up against one another when we're all in the same paradigm, oppressed by the same oppressor. You know, but yet it's still that one. I think is Dr. Chancellor Williams talked about the mulatto problem. You know, and the sister was saying, Sister Camille was just recently saying something in regard to how they took the mulatto, which is their seed, part of their seed, and they're going to side with their father because they went and got this education. They come back, and then they become your oppressor. They get on your back, and the oppressor's already on their back. And not to mention, there was a time when they were denied, you're my seed, but you're not my seed. So me sell her off, So they don't look at that. And down in Louisiana, we have a serious problem there. But right now, after the events of Katrina, they're pretty much trying to push them all out to the swamp. Get you out of the city. Let us buy up all of this historic land because we've already got y'all at war with one another, the Creole, the mulatto, the African, the indigenous. You have them all grouped together. I mean, because they could have a female that's just as light as me, knowing that she has a Spaniard seed, but she feels that she's writing down on the paper she's African American, but yet and still she feels a superiority complex. She feels like she's more superior to me because at one time these mulattoes owned slaves themselves in what is called the Vieux Carré French Quarter area. They themselves, who were the mistresses of these Englishmen from all over the world who would come down and make them their mistress and give them kids and put them in these little quarters with the children, and then they would give them the darker women as their slaves. But yet and still, their mothers themselves were slaves at that time. So they have put us against one another, and in the school system, it is absolutely ridiculous how divided our people are. Black power on that.
Hey, Black power, and to add on, the school, some of the things they do in the school system that really do affect us is, you have the separation by how intelligent they think you are. This is who sits in the front, this is who sits in the middle, this is who sits in the back. The more you need to, the people who need to pay attention the most is furthest away from the people who it's like, if you really need that help, you farthest away from the teacher, from the board, and everything else. You way in the back. You know what I mean? And so they put you in a situation to, all right, now, I might not know the subject. I don't really know the subject, and I'm the type who don't really pay attention too much, so I really need to be up near the front. But instead of putting me near the front, you put me all the way in the back where I'm definitely not paying attention to the subject. I might need glasses anyway, so I can't see anyway. So now the only thing that I got to do for the rest of the period is bother the rest of the class. They grind it up. So they grind it up. So they cause, like you said, us to go against each other. They cause that inflection of pain to each other. I wanted to put something in though. Once we start hitting the science, I wanted to separate science and racism. There was two books that I just wanted the people to try to check out, or just wanted to run by them real quick. And the first one is by Carl Linnaeus, and it's Systema Natura, or Nature's System. And this was put out in 1767. And Linnaeus created the system we still use.
Niggas are so mad around the country right now.
Hold on, somebody talking in the background, man. Yes, you guys are in the background. If you're talking right now and your line is off mute, so you might need to mute your line. But I'm gonna put this in real quick. We got Carl Linnaeus, 1767. Linnaeus created the system we still use today for categorizing life forms into species, genus, family, and so forth. His contributions to the life sciences are tremendous. He was a great scientist, and yet also he believed that humans came in 5 distinct species, which corresponded mainly to racial groups. They were Americanus, Europeanus, Asiaticus, and Africanus. You could probably figure out the group he meant. On the fifth category, he called monstrous, monstrosus, and referred mostly to people born with visible disabilities. In many ways, Linnaeus' system of categorizing races and species has never really left us. Many people like Wade and Chua still believe that there is a fundamental difference between the humans who are categorized into these racial groups. In the 21st century, however, population genetic studies show that these groups don't necessarily share genetic traits, even if they share cultural phenotypes. That's it. That's the first cracker I want to put in. There's another cracker real quick I want to put this cracker in. I don't want to put Friends. We know Friends is Golden. We know Golden. You know what I'm saying? Golden got a book called Inquiries into Human Faculty and Its Development. And Francis Galton is the cousin of Darwin. You know, Galton was a 19th century statistician. Galton was a 19th century statistician who was widely credited with popularizing the idea of eugenics. He helped shape our modern understanding of population genetics and did it partly by looking at the genetic backgrounds of people with what he considered to be good and bad traits. He was related to Charles Darwin and a strong supporter of the idea of evolution, which helped him come up with the idea that human behavior was the result of a conflict between nature and nurture. In Inquiries into Human Faculty and Its Development, he suggests that people need to plan marriages based on eugenics. Seeking spouses for prominent or successful families, like many scientific races, he believed that some families were more intelligent than others and that they were economically and politically successful. It just so happened that most of these intelligent families were among Britain's ruling class. Gordon believed that as long as these people were encouraged to have children, the population will undergo a eugenic trend with humanity becoming smarter and more successful. While many of Gordon's followers in the 20th century applied the theory of eugenics to racial groups, Gordon was more interested in proving that these deal with genetic differences between class groups. And then the last one I want to put in is by the physician, Diseases and Peculiarities of the Negro Race. Physician by Samuel Cartwright, 1851. And one of the things that I want to mention about the reason why the book that I'm really talking about are 19th century, late 18th century, is because we have to utilize the scholarship from the time that these theories and thoughts on scientific evolution and scientific development of how we got here and explanations. We have to put out information that was coming out at the same time so we can also get a good scope of the mind state of the people during that time. So you won't just say it's isolated when we say this cracker racist. All right. Physician Cartwright used his medical expertise to justify his beliefs about the inferiority of Africans. In this pamphlet that was extremely popular among slave owners, perhaps Cartwright's most widely discussed idea was the disease drapetomania, which cast as mental illness black slaves' efforts to run away and escape servitude. Because Cartwright believed that Africans were mentally unfit for self-determination, he argued that they only try to escape when they go crazy. Today, Cartwright's work has been assigned the status of pseudoscience among medical professionals, but there remains a widely held stereotype that when blacks are assertive that they are crazy or dangerous, whereas when whites are assertive, they are simply commanding and good leaders. And as you can see from this list, there's still many people who are using science to justify the claim that there are cognitive differences between racial groups. And in the genre of scientific racism, those differences are said to make white people more intelligent, Chinese people more ambitious, Islanders more open-minded, and many other things that have nothing to do with actual verifiable scientific evidence, but have everything to do with racism.
Mm-hmm.
One of the newer books, let me put this newer book in. Troublesome Inheritance, Genes, Race, and Human History by Nicholas Wade. Right now, it's undeniable that Wade's work is the most influential work of scientific racism circulating today. His argument is that racial groups have genetic predispositions to certain kinds of mental skills, some of which evolved only over the past few hundred years. As a result, some races are more creative or intelligent than others. The Chinese, he argues, are more prone to obedience, while people from tribal societies in Africa are impulsive and quick to consume everything they have. Meanwhile, Europeans are good at becoming prosperous due to their thoughtful, forward-thinking nature. Wade's work is a classical example of using the idea of genetics to explain social inequality. He believes that the citizens of nations share genetic qualities and that political events such as the rise of centralized banking can be traced to a shift in the European genome. This is a form of scientific racism because it justifies racial inequality as rational. After all, Africans are biologically incapable of consolidating their wealth. Meanwhile, Europeans are great at it. And I just want to put them in. You know, we could go into the bell curve and several other studies that has been put out on why we have low IQs and things of that nature. But I just want to put out a sample of 18th, 19th century work that delved in, that utilized mainly racist scientific idealism to interpret any of the scientific data that was given. And even as late as right now, you know, as late as this book is 2014, in 2014, this same interpretation of information is still prevalent. And so that's the reason why we must question all these things, and we find it hard to agree with black people who would tell us that it is unbecoming of us as Africans to question science, because science comes from Africa, and all we're doing is questioning what's really African. I do not agree with that statement. I don't like how people use that, and then they utilize that statement right there to shoo us away from asking questions, as though we're questioning our ancestors, as though we're, you know, you got to be crazy or dumb for asking these questions. But you know, as we see, the cracker is still using it, so I'm gonna question them all day. Black Power, go ahead. Y'all can add on. I just wanted to put those couple books in real quick to give people a little round out some of the information that's been given out to us.
Captain Africa on the line.
Captain Africa should be out there.
Yes, ma'am.
King, we following your lead.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and read something from Amos Wilson, you can, sister.
King, I'm gonna leave that to you, but I would like to share a quote, and I would like the family to give their opinion before Brother Minkara get into Amos Wilson. I do have my falsification of African consciousness out. Quick quote, and y'all tell me what y'all think, if this is how you feel about this. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man and a more civilized state, and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of, as now, between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Do anybody find that racist? Because, you know, the question got to be...
Who the fuck wrote that? The Klan member from South Carolina?
No, Charles Darwin. Black Power. Not, just so we know, that's, sorry, Brother Minkara, that was in 1890 from The Descent of Man.
And that's why I question their ass right there. See, this is why we can't trust these motherfuckers. Because they coming up with thought form. They come up with the shit, so then they can plan on killing us. And then be justified. Why shouldn't we kill them? Well, they did not to. We fucking animals. We animals anyway that are ripe for extermination. The African was the first on the evolutionary totem of becoming human. So we're the most savage of all of the other human species. So we are the ones who are ripe for the extermination.
By the civilized cracker beasts.
Yeah, by the civilized cracker. And we're listening, if we're to, take what was said.
Okay. Brother Minkara, when the brother was speaking the truth, showing the relationship between the racist cracker Darwin's work and eugenics, the brother was speaking the truth and he was ridiculed. Go ahead, Captain Africa.
Often, because that attack, he didn't know the history of that. You can't. It's hard to separate. It's like when Dr. Clark was speaking on Arabism and Islam and trying to separate the two. We're trying to separate Zionism and colonialism. We're trying to separate the two. Each one is dependent on the other. So even when you look at, let's look at the era America was in the 1800s. First off, look at the era in which produced Charles Darwin. This nigga come from an elite background. If you notice, all his Charles Darwin, Sir Isaac Newton, Sir Francis Galton, these motherfuckers all benefited from slavery. So if you notice, they weren't speaking on this shit. In fact, they were creating science to justify why they got rich off the shit. Now, when you know that, all these motherfuckers coming from Britain. What's important to know is they tell you and I that the Americans lost the war with the Britons and that America is independent. And why the fuck are American scientists taking British homogeny in the context? Or what's homogeny? The word homogeny means really to dictate the discourse of information from power. So you have Eurocentric homogeny. That means a Eurocentric interpretation of information, whether it be in politics, what have you. That's the interpretation of everything in the world. So why would America adopt that? Because America, regardless, the brute savages was the dirt of Europe. But they still have to fall back and give credit to the minds of Europe. And the minds of Europe are still in Europe, so they still pay taxes to the Queen. So they still dictate the discourse of information. Britain do. Now, while Britain outlawed slavery in England, they still have slavery in other colonies because Britain is a nation that has to have import. When you look at World War I, Germany, the German Empire, before Hitler was giving it to the motherfucking British because they were using submarines. Because the British prided themselves on their naval fleet. When the Germans wanted to get into the colonialism, meaning the Germans, just like every other nation do, the Germans created their own imperialism, their own royal family. Once they had Germany on lock, they had intentions of going international. When they had intentions of going international, that was going to be in conflict with the British. So they took at heed that the British prided themselves on their naval fleet, so they took submarines, so they adjusted. Now, going back to America, I'm just, giving an example right there. We're going back to America, and we're showing you how Eurocentric education in America is still coming from England. They venerated Sir Isaac Newton, all these individuals, but it was Sir Francis Galton who put Darwin's theory and made it a social reality. He pushed the emergency button for Europeans. Because when you look at the title of Darwin's first book, it really gives omission because he was only observing and reporting nature. And in nature, he kept finding the correlation of what was dominant, what was recessive, and so forth. What's the species that seem to be able to live the longest seem to be able to adapt. See, them niggas don't run. He said natural selection. He didn't say anything about evolution. His cousin said we can evolve. How can we evolve? when you look at the word evolve, it's a synthetic change, meaning it's a change that takes place that nature does not have no control over. So, for example, in nature, the European is recessive. He is not the dominant species. So, in nature, the African is, because we have the best capacity to reproduce, we have the best capacity to endure. How the fuck is the European in power now? The main reason he's in power now is because he took us out of that natural and habitat that we were in and put us in a false habitat. They learned behavior modification on animals before they ever tried it on human beings. You can get a fucking elephant. An elephant is the most prized possession of Africa. It represents endurance. It represents strength. But in European culture, you can have the fucking elephant bouncing a goddamn plastic ball on the top of his head eating peanuts in the circus because he's outside, she's outside, or it's outside of its natural habitat.
Right.
So in other words, you look in Darwinism as being not evidential, but more philosophical in a sense.
Yes, it was a social construction. Because remember, when these people in England created this idea, they didn't embark in slavery no more. So even though they weren't in slavery no more, what they had to do was they had to still put a social order in place to either soften up your interpretation on slavery. You see what I'm saying? It came to mainly the same people who ordained slavery was the church. And you have Calvinists, and this before they had science to prove they racist, to prove that there was any differences between any races. They had just theory and myth. Then when you look at the Civil War, while Darwin and shit, 1859, Origin of Species. The American Civil War was what, 1860? 1865? Check that reference for me. The Americans are actually putting this shit into practice because America ain't. Well, somebody can look up when did Britain abolish slavery? 1812, 1815, something like that. Like 20, 30 years before America did. So on paper, in newspapers, Englishmen are bashing Americans but they still making money off the shit. You see what I'm saying? They're hypocrites. They create logic for why they were in power and so forth.
Rhetorical techniques, in other words.
Yeah, rhetorical techniques. Now let's look at how they came into medical science in America was by fucking coincidence. What's the proof? Can you prove it, make a law? Yes, I can. Look at the Revolutionary War in America. Look at the Civil War. Both of them had the same medical practices. If Nicaragua was out there in the field and I got a shot in the shin, they was gonna cut my whole leg off. They didn't know nothing about medical science. At the end of the Civil War, because of all the crackers that got killed, it was the same thing that happened during the bubonic plague. The same thing that happened with a lot of European scientists who started going into what is it called, and the process of embodying and so forth. When you got that many goddamn bodies, you got time to work on human anatomy. See what I'm saying? They got to study the best. They don't put this in. Harriet Washington. Medical apartheid put that in. If you look at the best medical scientists that came out of the damn 19th century, had owned slaves. Because you can work, they were the best thing in human specimens. Now, this is the only thing I fear in regard to the European, because serial killing, all that shit. When you look back then, in the name of science, if you own Negroes, you can cut a nigga up. So they know something about us biologically. Can I prove it? Hell yeah. Because before they had the science, they said niggas were savages and then they was monkeys. And then when they started learning us, cutting our bodies up and studying us through slavery and getting real science, we all come from Africa. I say, what the fuck did you find in us and in yourself to go 360 degrees? You see what I'm saying? That's something to think about. That is something to really think about. Nigga, you were saying you was God looking over all the other species, and then you got me. You said we all equal. God will never equate himself to the devil because he created. I mean, I don't want to use. Let's not use examples. The greatest ain't gonna associate themselves with the lowliness. You see what I mean? Unless the great find something, unless the great really know that the low is the one that's the high. You know what I mean? And instead of you saying that the nigga on the bottom is really the nigga on top, you would just say, well, we're all the same. So it's, double talk. This is what's going on at the end of the 19th century. Now let's look at why they were so caught up in trying to hold us back. They say during slavery in America, if a Negro was caught reading, it was death. Now let's look at 1865. That's when the Civil War ended, and that's when we were so-called free. From 1865 to 1910, that's 30 years, maybe less, maybe higher. But we'll just say that's one generation. One generation of free Negroes in America outsmarted, outperformed, and changed American literature. The Harlem Renaissance. You see the context I'm setting up?
Mm-hmm.
One of the professors at this white university was a Brit. He is a Brit. He was, because he's still alive. He is a Brit. He mocks American motherfuckers. He can't stand, he be mocking American white folks. But he gravitated to me. He's been in African countries. He's an African archaeologist. And I'm sitting there fucking with him one day. And I said, Dr. Robinson, have you ever read African American history in America? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, well, I'll put it to you like this. When y'all flushed the toilets of Western Europe on America and brought slaves over here, we outsmarted y'all savages. And he smiled when I said that. Even though he didn't know nothing about African-American history over here, he smiled because he like, that's my fascination with you, nigga. That's why I like your black ass. I'm going to use that to my advantage and stroke his ego, but he ain't going to outsmart me. Because the fact that I know European history and African-American history, he don't know, I mean, I can work that nigga to my advantage. But y'all see the point I'm making, right?
Yeah.
So we outsmarted the savage over here within 25 years in literature. Changed American literature. That's something to keep in mind.
Right. And I want to ask. Oh, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Something else in mind. After look at the time periods in which the Harlem Renaissance is thriving, and when America, so-called the Great Depression, started, I think that was to destabilize our motherfucking economy. And this is for niggas who think we need economy and don't know history. We have two periods in American history that's most relevant and where statistics and numbers can be seen and counted for. That's the Harlem Renaissance, and that's Black Wall Street. Money ain't gonna fix the motherfucking problem. That's for the neo-colonialists. Because even motherfuckers with money, Oprah, billionaire. Sad sight. No kids. She would never pass that money on. Go over to Europe, go shopping. Didn't know that was Oprah. Bitch, you can't get in here. There are no Negroes allowed in this shopping mall. And we don't care how much money you have. So racism oversees money.
It does.
It's on every day. We see that.
And I wanted to add, I remember last night in that build with Brother Ankh, we were looking for, and I can recall telling him that I was going into a couple of university libraries to look for some peer-reviewed articles, in which later on I did come across one. And I told him I needed to speak with him about that, but that was earlier. But the one that I did come across was, it was written by a doctor, a PhD doctor. His name was Tom Woodard, and it was called Darwinism Under the Microscope. But what was more important was an excerpt that I found in there, and it was said to come from a book written by a doctor named William Provine. The name of the book was called Evolution and the Foundation of Ethics. And he is quoted as saying this: the destructive assumptions of evolutionary biology extend far beyond the assumptions of organized religion to a much deeper and more pervasive belief held by the vast majority of people that non-mechanistic organizing designs or forces are somehow responsible for the visible order of the physical universe, biological organisms, and human moral order. That was really deep. And here what he said, the destructive assumptions of evolutionary biology. He's saying that the assumptions of evolutionary biology are destructive, extend far beyond the assumptions of organized religion to a much deeper and more pervasive belief held by the vast majority of people that non-mechanistic organizing designs or forces are somehow responsible for the visible order of the physical universe, biological organisms, and human moral order. I had to highlight that, because I want to go back to that, and use that. I think he's gonna have another show coming up where he has some things, and I mean, it was this particular excerpt was filled with Darwinism under the microscope in a certain context. Because I think you guys were talking about it in a different context to a certain extent. But yeah, there's a lot of things that you can find. But when you're looking for specific things, there was a lot that I came across. And I know there's gonna be argument. There's gonna be a rebuttal on that. Well, this is what they were talking about and this or that. But at the same time, there was he also was quoted as saying Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist, and and I'm gonna go deeper into that as I look.
Yeah, that's what you hold. See, that's what you hold dear reference, because when you're looking at the reality of European history, before the Bible gets to us, no other people on the planet have suffered oppression from the church more than Europeans. I will point out the Dark Ages. And this is a time and period that they even admit themselves, the Dark or Middle Ages. Fuck the Middle, the Dark Ages. What's going on here? There was the church overseeing every aspect of life.
Yeah, I have a book. It's something.
And for punishment. So when we look at who spawned the scientific revolution, well, thank you, Queen, for that reference too, because now you got me on right. Who spawned the scientific revolution for Europeans? Jews.
Yeah.
A good reference for this, Dr. Walter Williams' work. It
yes,
was
he sure does.
Jews who created and facilitated the rise of Martin Luther. Meaning Martin Luther was pissed off with the church, giving them reformers, nigga was activists going, and the first institution that happened to have the first printing press as well had no problem with educating these Western Europeans enough to create a schism. That's why you have the Protestant church and the Catholic church. You see what I'm saying? When you understand this history, you understand what role did both of these motherfuckers play in black people's slavery. Well, the Catholics were the first people to institute it. And while they were doing well, because they didn't like the British and the French and they kicked their ass out, the French and the English got together and got into power and actually overthrew the church in slavery, and now they run it to this day in the 1800s.
They sure do. A good book to reference on that is one that I have. It was written in 1921 by two professors, one named Dana Murnau and another one named Raymond James Sontag. And the name of the book is The Middle Ages, 395 through 1500. Very, very old book, very good information, excellent for research. Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Now, just went to Africa. He recently apologized for what? For apologizing publicly for the decree that his former predecessors gave on instituting slavery as an institution. That should have been proof enough for African people to see the role that the church played in our institution of slavery. To leave it alone. Now, what role? I asked this question last night. If science has been tampered with, it's pseudoscience. Even if it's been tampered with, what's racism? Even if it's tampered now, a good historian is like a lawyer, like Dr. Clark said. He can cite presidents when the shit already happened. Europeans have already been caught with their hand in the pot, making pseudo information to put down man. Now, the geologist, whatever, it was found in England. It was a ape skull, or ape, the chin bone of an ape put on a human skull. The individual that produced this was a Darwin. So when the sister just read that quote, the worst thing you can call a scientist is to say that the scientists are making assumptions. It's a calculated hypothesis is one thing. To make assumptions is another thing. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if you're a scientist and you're assuming and speculating, that means your ass is just brainstorming. Your ass is on a Star Wars ship. Mm-hmm. Your ass is a black wannabe Luke Skywalker on this motherfucker.
Yeah, it almost becomes like some sort of, well, quote-unquote, scientific materialist philosophy, in a sense. I mean, really, if you look at it, because you're not really dealing with, I feel that. I mean, that's a good counter. I'm serious. That's a really good counter. But then you have to be in a certain, dialogue to really express that without people coming in and screaming, because, I mean, the discourse got a little out of hand last night. I had to get off. I was like, wait a minute, they about to cut up. But y'all did calm down after a minute, I think. Then Goldie got on, and it went on to something else. But, it's a good dialogue just as long as everyone can get their point across, No,
sister. I respect Brother Ngozi's.
Absolutely.
Because he has a good reference and he has good memory.
Yeah,
but he doesn't question information. And by not questioning information, he not knowingly becomes a servant of neocolonialists. Why? Now, I asked him last night, how are you putting a DNA correlation or DNA marker on an ethnic group? Now, Europeans say he used an analogy on some brother. He said that they were able to see that he had a white relative that came from England. Yes. Looking at your black DNA, they were able to isolate and see the most recent mutation, and that was the recent mutation of a European. That's easy to do. But if they say that Africans have the most diverse DNA code or DNA structure, diverse meaning complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find a little bit of everything in it, right? Mm-hmm. Then how are they able to? It's the same analogy I used last night. It's like me and you being private investigators, Queen, and we need to match up an individual. And the only thing we can get from him is a cigarette butt, so we go test it for DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a very intelligent sister. Right. If me and you were under the microscope, can me and you see what language this nigga spoke and how smart he was?
Right. I mean, I felt that even last night. I was listening, definitely, Right. You make a valid point, and it was duly noted. I know on my end it was, because I'm a thinker.
Shay, Queen.
What'd you say, sister?
I'll give you something else to think about. It's outside our topic, but it's something else to think about. They teach you that they're able to predict the weather because they have Doppler radar, right? Everybody know about Doppler radar, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the question I'm going to ask you. You use a microwave in your house, right, Queen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you get a radio wave to bounce off a water molecule without heating it up?
You got to heat it up. I mean, something has to happen, in order for that next reaction.
Exactly. Now you're wondering why the weather's changing and shit. They said it was supposed to rain tomorrow, and they turned on Doppler radar, and it's cloudy, but it ain't raining. Yeah, because they didn't fucking vaporize the little water we was finna get by turning that motherfucking that radio receiver on.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
But see, if you don't question this shit, you're going to be caught up. Man, Corey, you know what you're talking about. They're able to successfully predict the accountability of tornado winds by just turning on physics. Man, shut the fuck up. Listen to what I'm saying. How do you get a radio wave? That's what it is. To bounce off a cloud or water vapor, right?
Mm-hmm. They're
not dense like an aircraft. You can get a radio wave to bounce off an aircraft real quick. That's radar. We got a motherfucking incoming missile. It's dense. The water vapor is the lightest, one of the lightest elements on. How are you getting a radio wave to bounce off of it without heating it up or agitating the water vapor?
Right.
But yeah, that's just something to think about. Yeah, you got to question everything. The point I'm making when it comes to this European.
Right. You have to decipher. You have to look at it. I mean, even I can understand that. Even I can understand that everything that's pushed on us based in science has to be looked at. Just like we have to unlearn everything else. We definitely have to look at science in a different perspective based in what they've done with it,
And knowing who they are. You know what I mean, Queen?
Yes.
Questioning it doesn't mean you're anti-learning, you're anti-science. No, it means you're pro-African centered, and you know your enemy.
Yeah, and that's pro-science. You know what I'm saying? All we want to do is the main thought is all we want to do is reanalyze your motherfucking perspective, man. We not trying, like you said, we're not trying to turn over scientific data. We just want to analyze it and give it our own motherfucking spin on it because we know you putting your spin on it. There's no way. It's inherent. It's inherent in anybody interpreting anything to put in their cultural aspect onto whatever the fuck they interpret it. So we dealing with somebody who is ingrained with a fucking steady thought of racism and white supremacy. Now that's just the initial layer of who's interpreted, but then that interpretation is taken through an empirical data filter.
Yeah, you have to do that empirical evidence. You need that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we're taking through another filter where this field, when they take it through that next filter, it's so it can get out into academia. so you can put it inside a textbook. These things are already codified. They got a fucking money system set up on this shit. They getting paid off of this shit. They are not about to just overturn what they've already created that is giving them the scientifical on everybody else. They're giving everybody the excuse on why white people giving everybody the reason why they should be kicking our ass.
Yeah, which would go to show why they closed the doors on Dr. Diop's works when he went in to test the pigmentation of the mummies, and found out that they were nothing other than African, and they began to close those doors. In that video they talk about that. That's exactly why, because it was too much to give the world. This is too much. We can't give the world this because it's going to change their precept on what we've already put down, in the books. We can't let them have this information.
And I just want to add to what Minkara had said about when did medical science begin in this country. The brother gave the time period. And to show and prove that, just to add on to that, the father of gynecology, right? J. Marion Sims, right? He's called the father of gynecology. He was the first physician to have a statue erected in his honor. He used our ancestors that were in bondage to carry out experiments that led to the field of gynecology.
You saw it, sister. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
From 1845 to 1849. Black Power.
Black Power.
I say. Can I read something real quick, too? Because Brother Ngozi asked me why I was in anthropology. He was attacking my conviction in my field. Page 30, the preview. Structure of Black Civilization. Quote, an African is a member of the black race, and from times immemorial, he was also known as such by all peoples of the world. Throughout this work, the term refers to blacks only. It should be noted also that I write about the African people, not African peoples, as Western writers do. I'm dealing with here the essentially one people, one race. If you please, the African race. In ancient times, African and Ethiopian meant the same thing, a black. This, of course, was before the Caucasians began to reorder the earth to suit themselves and felt it necessary to stake their birthright over the land of blacks. In line with this, some Western historians have recently wondered where the Africans came from. The reasons given for beginning formal studies of Africa at Oxford imply much more than was stated. Reference was made You know, hear me, Black Power? My bad,
yeah,
my bad.
Black Power.
Okay, my bad. The reasons given for beginning formal studies of Africa at Oxford imply much more than stated. Reference was made to studying the Caucasian mind, for therein may be found many clues that led to a better understanding of the history of blacks and how the systematic blackout of significant proportions of that history occurred. Here we go, this man goes. That is why I encourage those students who intend to accept the great challenge of basic research in this discipline to go into enemy territory, linger there, study, and critically analyze their lectures and their scholarly writings, for there are some of the most rewarding sources for African history. Precisely because in truly attempting to delete, disguise, or belittle the role of Africans in world history, they often reveal the opposite of what was intended.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
They are fruitful sources of unconscious evidence supplying the very evidence they thought to suppress, or recording facts, the significance of which they were totally ignorant of.
A fairly good example is the written account of a European explorer in East Africa. He was outraged because he and his party had to wait 2 weeks to present a request to explore the country to the African king. The black aristocrat, the account went on, had the preassumption to keep white men waiting in order to show his people how high and mighty he was. The whites were denied even a brief audience, while the king would only briefly receive any black that wandered in from the countryside. Now, the explorer, without knowing it, was exactly reporting how African democracy worked and how it had been working before it was in Athens or Greek, where Westerners think democracy was born. The explorer would have been surprised to know that, one, king in Africa meant something totally different from what it meant in Europe and Asia, and two, that this black king, far from putting on heirs, did not have the right to receive them, even socially, without the presence of at least 3 senior elders. And 3, that to consider a petition to conduct explorations in the country, a full council of state had to be called, and that it could not be done by the king without advice of the first minister, who happened to be on tour when the explorers arrived at the capital. And all blacks they saw wandering in the old countryside and immediately given audience were the counselors who had been summoned, so folks from distant provinces. Let me go in and read this part right here, and I'm going to shut up right quick, because this thing goes. The first tragedy to note about the effects of this class education on blacks is that it further reinforces colonialism's policy of perpetual disunity in Africa and elsewhere. The line dividing these upper black and middle classes from the black masses and their black basic aspirations is more rigidly drawn. And this superior class mentality becoming even more crystallized since independence is almost certainly guaranteed of future uprisings on a scale never seen. The second great tragedy is the nature of what is called education. It goes, it is mainly rote learning. The ability to memorize phrases and concepts and other data. Thinking is neither required nor accepted. Critical analysis and evaluation of subject matter are not required, but the ability to absorb and recall is required. The brilliant scholar, then, is one who can readily quote authorities and remember well bibliography sources. So we have a generation of black scholars who continue to amaze students by mouthing the doctrines and viewpoints of their white teachers like so many robots without minds of their own. Chancellor Williams, page 25.
Black Power.
Black Power.
And it's clear, well, according to Sheikh Anta Diop, that, race doesn't exist to the cracker beast when it comes to staking claims on our homeland. When it comes to staking claims on our high civilizations of the Nile Valley, then race don't exist. Outside of that, race exists. And this is for the scientists. Race does not exist. But we know that Europe is populated by whites, Asia by yellows and whites, who are responsible for the civilizations of their respective countries and homelands. The race of the ancient Egyptians alone must remain a mystery. Western ideology believed it could decide that it was to be so. Today, the data of molecular biology are used indiscriminately to try to complicate the problem. But it just so happens that the method of this new discipline can cast a singular light on the ethnic identity of the ancient Egyptians, if one ever cares to apply them judiciously. It is recognized that a biased anthropologist can whiten a black or blacken a white.
Yeah. Black power, sister. Yes. Okay. And that's exactly what they do. You know?
All right? But as Sheikh Anta Diop shows, there are, in fact, racial markers The Diego factor is characteristic of the yellow race. Okay? Then we have the Suda or the Henshaw factors are detectable almost exclusively among blacks. The Kell factor is mainly observed among whites. And now we want to say in 2015, race don't exist, but you stand on the shoulders to shake out the deal?
Black power, sister. Black power. Anything dealing with Diop, you got my attention. That's for certain. Master teacher, indeed.
And people wonder why we ask questions. That's why we ask questions. Diop tells us question this shit. Don't be just taking this shit just because they say it.
Yeah, I think Diop opened me up to a lot, coming into my own awakening. The first book that I got from Diop was Pre-Colonial Black Africa. That's the first book that I got from on Diop, and that was in 90. And then from there, African Origin of Civilization, and then Civilization of Barbarism. But Diop really opened me up to a whole lot of stuff. He helped me to think. And that's why I consider him a master teacher of mine. There's some, that say, "Oh, I don't want to hear anything about Diop," but to discredit Diop, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he really gives you a reason to think, and to go back, because we knew this. We saw it happening. We saw it. He told us things were going on. He told us that they didn't want us to know, the world to know exactly what they were doing, with the mummies, what they were doing in these conferences. They didn't want him to know. And I think it was Ivan Van Sertima who said that, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was blacks in Rome and Greece. I think it was a lecture he gave on blacks in Rome and Greece, from Blacks in Science, one of those, it's one of the two, so don't quote me, but it's definitely there, where he said that they knew in the conference, they knew that everything that was being presented, had everything to do with African origins of everything, even the beginning. But they said, "Oh, we're going to sign off on it, but you can't say we did it," because they had to stay in alignment with the elitists. The elitists say, "Hey, we got to keep this world. We got to keep this world order. And if we let the world know that this is what's going on, we got to keep this at a minimum. We got to keep this on a scholastic level. When it comes down to academia, they have to be in the master's program, or better yet, in the doctorate program, in order to get this information right here. We can't put this in undergrad studies or these other studies, because they'll start to knowing too much. We gotta, they gotta reach in order to get this information, because it's definitely there and they know it, and the scholars know. There was a case in point. There was I was in the Dollar General one day, and there was a white man in there, and he just had to have something to say to me, I guess, because he told me, he said, "Hey, how do you keep your skin so tan?" I'm sorry, I don't mean the bars. I said, "Oh, no problem." I said, it's melanin. He said, "I know that. I'm a doctor." He said, "But it's so smooth, and I just wanted to compliment you on it." I think he wanted to look in my eyes, look in the eyes of the goddess, because he knows what the world doesn't know. He knows that I am of that original seed, an aboriginal. He understands that, but he just had to have something to say to me, and it, I can't say I was amused or anything, because I'm not a white person. I'm not a fan of white people. Period. Everybody around me know this. My father used to say, you can't go through life being racist, but he was a devout Christian, so hey, of course he's gonna say that. But they know who we are. They know what we are, and those who are in the scholastic world understand everything it is to understand about the true reality of that deals with science. They know it, but yet and still they know the misinformation is in the school system. It's in the world. It's in the public schools. It's in, so they know that they're going to put just enough out there for us to get interested, but not too interested, because if they would tell us in chemistry that the formula has everything to do with us, melanin, the key component, to life. They know that we pay more attention. We be more involved in what's going on in chemistry. But we go to a chemistry class and be like, oh, Lord, I don't want to dissect a frog, But they're not going to tell you anything about chemistry, and it has everything to do with you. We have to change it and make it out of numbers. They'll get upset with numbers because math and science, those are the things that our children need, but yet and still those aren't the things that they're being enriched by or cultivated in, because they look at both of them as being too hard. And that's the problem. We got to reverse that. Black power. Black power.
And sister, I like to family. I like to read something from the falsification, building on that by Dr. Amos Wilson. In the context of a racist social system, psychological diagnosis, labeling, and treatment of the behavior of politically oppressed persons are political acts performed to obtain political ends. For oppression begins as a psychological fact and is in good part a psychological state. If oppression is to operate with maximum efficiency, it must become and remain a psychological condition, achieving self-perpetuating notions by its own, notions by its own internal dynamics and by its own inertia momentum. And that's what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's every realm of this racist society, including science. Every realm. It's all political.
Mm-hmm.
Black power on that, sister. Yeah. That was good. That was a good one. Would you read that from again? A falsification?
Falsification of African consciousness. So, one of the things that I love about Dr. Amos Wilson's work is that he's showing me that you can be highly educated and still be affected psychologically by your indoctrination from your enemy.
Absolutely. Dr. Frances Chess Wilson said the same thing in her book, The ISIS Papers. She said something to that regard. Definitely, that the educated one is the one that has the most issues, because he's been taught, the European way as opposed to his own way. So yeah, absolutely.
And the best way they get the best effects that they have to crystallize that in your mind is to have the study environment that of a social construction, a classroom. When you look at African children or African people in regards to math and science, we are the creators of math and science, but why aren't we catching it in schools? The way that they're teaching it to us is from an isolation perspective, meaning Europeans come from an environment that's not enduring, or they have contention with their environments. My thing is, when you look at Africans that mastered math and science, they had an outdoor experience. So what would the classroom experience be like from, our children if math was taught outside? You would have a totally different effect because they wouldn't stop counting. Mama, did you know that there's 365 leaves on the such and such tree? You see what I'm saying? Instead, they isolate us and give us imaginary numbers with symbols to calculate. But niggas can count money. How? Because money's real. You see what I'm saying? But they want to put you in a classroom and give you a system of numbers that are based off symbols and tell you to make the same assessment as if they're real. And that's what we fail at in terms of math, because it's the curriculum. It's how the math's being taught. The math's not being taught in terms of reality. You see what I mean? Little man know how to count. When they give us the little play money when we in school, little man know how to count their change. Or little Riri, she know how to count their change real quick. But the minute it comes to algebra, which is dealing with formulas that are dealing with fake numbers, we seem to have problems. And it's really often because I was taught. And it's taught on a more basic, primitive level to appeal to that of a European. Even the learning behaviors of our children is different. We have to make that assessment right there. And to put our children among Europeans is to give Europeans a benefit, and to some extent to put our children among Europeans is to give our children, to hold our children back. Meaning that cracker child gonna learn more from your black child, and your black child gonna stunt in his growth by being around him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with it because we deal with it as mothers with children, you know, in diverse situations. We deal with that.
Ashe, and Brother Mikra, you had mentioned the original title of The Origins of Species by the racist cracker beast. That's what I'm calling him, Charles Darwin. Okay? And I want to share with the family because this is important. This is important because we got our own people pushing racial ideology under the guise of African science, all right, called evolution, right? Right? The original title is The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Now, that last line was taken out in the reprint of the books because the cracker beast realized that was politically incorrect and would show, just off the title, that it was ideology behind Darwin's observation or recording of his observations of things.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
And once he put that into play, Sir Francis Galton, a polymath, this nigga seen the practicalness of it. Look at it as a blueprint. It's the same. Let me put it in a better fashion. Anybody heard what the Mein Kampf? Is that Hitler's goddamn biography? One of his key references, I'm sure, in that book would be Charles Darwin. The emergency that Charles Darwin put. Charles Darwin waved the white flag in terms of letting Europeans know that if we maintain ourselves in a natural state, nature is not going to be in our favor. We're going to do a new fallout. And it's really about preserving white skin. It's really about maintaining, even population control, all of that shit stems from maintaining. Because it's weird because every other people in power, every society, every dynasty have always had population on their side as well. That's why they've been able to endure. But Europeans have a unique, they always want to have 1,000-year, Hitler bragged 1,000-year empire, but they fall short of doing that because they can't populate. Now, when you look at the preservation of the origin of species, or the preservation, you understand? On one hand, if you're looking at it, yeah, we're going to get the origin of species, but then on the other hand, because I'm pretty sure when you read if any nigga has, the last chapters of his book is the preservation of certain issues. He's coming with social programs in place to combat this extinction prediction, because he's predicting extinction, in my opinion. Francis Galton seen it. Social Darwinism became a social movement for all Europeans, mostly European. No, pick this out. I got to call the names, I have to. Uck calls himself the black atheist. And no one has been more in support of black genocide by supporting eugenics than white scientists. Even white Christians are against the shit. You better pick and choose your enemies well, my nigga. I'm going to say that shit again. When you look at it, most of the motherfuckers, Margaret Sanger, She appealed to the white scientists or white elite motherfuckers, not white Christians. Because even white Christians were even under the whole white trash even fell under the banner of social Darwinism. Because the motherfuckers was called feeble-minded. Yes, whole white trash too. They wanted to preserve rich aristocracker bloodlines through social Darwinism. Old money, nigga, not new money. What's old money? Come from bloodline. I mean, that's something else too for a lot of other niggas who want to talk economy. The typical average rich motherfucker, we talking about Europeans, they inherit their money through inheritance. Now, if that's been the norm for the past 150 years, 200 years in America, that means that all inheritors of wealth in America have a slavery connection.
Okay.
And the only way you benefit in America and get rich is if you're in the business of exploitation. Even if you exploit the ignorance of your own people. Hence, the Evolution Convention. I'm going to be quiet.
Black Power, Captain Africa. Okay? Only a mental slave would argue that you wrong. That you wrong for feeling like you owe a debt to your ancestors that went through the Ma'afa. That it's your duty to collect on that blood debt. Okay? As Dr. Amos Wilson says, we suffer from social amnesia. We forget the debt we owe to past generations. We wrong for hating the cracker beast. No, you're not hating the cracker beast as a sign of your insanity. Okay? Your psychological insanity caused by your indoctrination that causes you to feel a disconnect to the very people while you stand upon this earth or Jeb today.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
And if I could, I want to throw something else out there. White folks have debates and lectures over religion and politics all the time, but they don't feel the need to have to raise money. And when they do raise money, I'll give you an example of a cause they raise money for. Shit like MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, for example. Sonetta, won't y'all just go ahead and have a fund for mothers whose sons and daughters have been killed by police and come up with a nice acronym for it? And that'll be the fun. Mothers shot down by cops, you know what I mean? SHO, however you want to dress it up. But that's a fund worth donating for. It's enduring. It's lasting. It's going to speak to the social programs, and you're going to really see who your economic enemies are once you create something positive like that. All you want to do is create something positive we need to be putting a fund together for mothers, because a lot of other mothers' sons have been shot down and daughters have been shot down who ain't got public publicity. So we have a fund for them, and if they want to, register and so forth, build log in, that's something worth donating. Would you agree?
I definitely, I think that's an excellent idea too. And my thing is, nobody's saying that, if you're doing the promotion, you paying for everything. I'm not saying that you shouldn't get a little bit of paper, but at the end of the day, though, man, we need to make sure that because the community needs, and you can't create an avenue, to
I brought that up, Brother Bourne, because, listen, Brother Bourne, we have family members who are in the NBA, we have family members who are in the entertainment business, who wish they could make donations to certain agencies, but because how they position, like even Jimi Hendrix, for example, for years the Black Panther Party was trying to get him to donate, and he donated his last album and cost him his life. So we got to be savvy on how we address certain shit. So we address something like we have a donation group for mothers shut down or mothers who are victim of law enforcement accidents or crimes or whatever. Now we open the doors. Now they can throw money on a low donation. In fact, they have to be inclined to, because now it's an organization or a fundraiser that's well organized for the good cause. See, when you see, like Umar Johnson, when he was trying to get an NBA player off for a school, any school that's against curriculum is a problem. So that's going to be probably getting funded. But, you know, let's be practical. If you can get some money towards those mothers who've been suffering, she'll be more keen to you and put the one out to other mothers so that we can have an underground school once you get money. And let's get this shit. Let's attend to what need to be attended to right now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They make examples. Drunk driving get to going up. They've looked at statistics and said that the majority of drunk drivers is the victims. When they look at the end, the people who suffer from drunk driving are mothers. So they made Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Set points and all that shit. Now they have laws in place. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That go for you. This is work that needs to be done by the neocolonialists to appeal to us. Niggas who don't want to have a hand in the actual movement. Well, nigga, you can revolt on that paperwork then. Fall in line. At least know your role. Don't be caught up somewhere in space in some kind of air vacuum, lost in a vortex. You know what I'm saying?
Ashay.
Peace to that. Peace and Black Power. Oh, yeah.
Black Power to the family out there. You know, the lines is open. Our family out there, what's going on, Sister McKee? You know, not all the lines is open right now, but some of the family, I know y'all lines already been open.
Open them up, brother B. Open them up, man. Let them niggas in.
Captain Africa in the building.
You open up everybody's line.
Black Power fam, I'm just taking it all in. You know, I didn't I'm guessing, what was it, like a radio show or something? You know, I didn't get a chance to tune in, so I'm really trying to catch up, you know, what happened.
Black Power.
Black Power, Queen.
Black African Power.
It's always good to have sisters in. So, keep it tight. They're going to keep it tight. You know, I'm already letting y'all know that the call's going to be made by the sisters. The Queen's already had enough. You know what I'm saying? So, too much bullshit. Black Power, go ahead. I'm about to make a rock.
Yeah, go ahead and open the lines up, man. Let them, they got questions. Let them niggas ask their questions.
The line's open. Everybody's line's open. Anybody got any questions or comments, please add on. In the room. Go quiet. What? Well, like at the beginning of the show, as I started off, over here on Feet on the Ground, we always got a problem with cracker interpretation. We always got a problem with white people giving us the information and telling us that you got to accept it, and we always got a problem with Negroes who come in with the same thing. Because if you talk to me like a white man and tell me, listen, man, you got to take it, love it, hate it, no matter what, then, man, all of a sudden I know that we're dealing in a religion. And science has become a religion inside of, inside of what we call it the African, not even just the African community, but in the world in general, science is a religion, but it's now rearing its ugly head as a religion inside of what we call this so-called conscious community. And so we're going to have to deal with this properly because, as we said, we don't want to throw science away, but we're going to definitely throw away a lot of interpretation of what the science is. We're going to look at some of the radical factors, and also we're going to look into what the ancestors said. Because the ancestors ain't tell us, because one of the things that we're dealing with when you talk about Darwin was talking about, he was talking about the races. And so one of the main problems is with this evolution of the African from out of this ape creature. That's where the problem, that's where one of the main problems lies at.
What's up, man?
Right here. Because this is where the racism, white supremacy
Right, who is this?
That sounds like a self-hating coon.
Yeah, we ain't got nothing to say. Well, we're going to continue on. I think this is going to speak right to what we're dealing with right here. We're going to look at Amos Bush's book, The Falsification of Black Consciousness, Socio-Political Role of Historiography. We have an issue here that I call the projection and image of history. History has been downplayed in this society. History has a poor reputation. Often it is looked upon by too many people as essentially a set of dates and events. People ask, why should I study these things? Why should I study these events? What does it have to do with today? It is, as they say, okay, it may be used to explain how some things come about in today's world, but probably who could live without it? Often history among even many of our people, even so-called black history itself, has been looked upon as irrelevant and unprofitable. The idea is, quote, why study black history? It's not going to make me any money. It's not going to get me a job. What can I do with it? You should get yourself a degree in computer science. Get a trade. I'm not interested in black power. I'm interested in green power. These statements express foolish concepts. When we hear them, we recognize the individual has not seen the connection between history, power, and money. There is a direct connection between history, power, and economics. I often say in this regard that if there were not a direct relationship between history and money, a direct relationship between history and power, history and rulership, history and domination, then why is it that Europeans rewrote history? Why is it that Europeans want to take our history away from us? Why is it that Europeans want to rewrite our history and distort it? Why is it that he does not want to present it at all? Apparently, the rewriting, the distortion, and the stealing of our history must serve vital economic, political, and social functions for the European, or else he would not bother and try so hard to keep our history away from us and to distort it in our minds. Let us meditate on these issues. And I think we'll come to realize that there's a direct relationship between history, economics, political, and social development. History and psychology. History is projected in this culture as being irrelevant. I don't think by accident. Again, if it was made to look irrelevant, it is made to look unprofitable. Then making it appear so must serve some profitable purpose. When the courses in colleges or universities are apparently presenting, quote, unpolitically, objectively, neutrally education, they are actually presenting they're presenting it in the most political way. We must understand that it is not the nature of this racist culture to hide its political agenda. We must understand that it is not in the nature of this racist culture to hide its political agenda. Therefore, it presents so-called facts and information as if they have no political connection or implication. I often try to show how making something politically creates knowledge and information that can be of great value. I often use the concept of the Skinner rat to show how the concept of presenting non-politically is the psychology of learning how the rat in the box and can only eat if it performs a particular behavior. So if it pushes a lever, it is only as the result of pushing that lever that it is allowed to eat. The experimenter determines when this rat is going to eat, when it is going to drink. He determines the living conditions under which the rat must survive. The rat must be conditioned. Changes as a result of the fact that the man has control of all things in his life. Thus, we must present the paradigm in various thorough ways in the learning and reinforcement of principles.
Black power. Okay, Brother Mikra, I'd like to add on to that. This is from African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order, Dr. Amos Wilson. Because I'm looking at the black neo-colonialists as taking the role of assimilationist leadership. Dr. Amos Wilson, when we deal with an assimilationist leadership that sees solutions to our problem as getting our children more soundly educated in these lies, we are going to see a decline and the destruction of African people who think that their salvation is one of being educated by the very people who destroyed them in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
We have a paradox there. Why is it that the arbitrator of truth, the validation of truths, are the very people who lie to us most? I often have to remind my students and my audiences that were I to say something, you would have a hard time believing it. But if a white man comes in and says it to you and says it, you believe it right away. You have to be conditioned to accept truth and see truth as coming out of the mouth of these liars. How is it that this education makes our people backwards, such that the first people they believe are the people who lie to them the most, that the first validators of truth are the people who have manipulated their very lives through lies and deception? I have indicated time and time again how you cannot have this 10% of the world population ruling over the other 90% unless 10% keeps the 90% out of its mind. It can only achieve its dominance over the other 90% through deception.
Like power, sister. Oh, yes.
We must recognize that the white man's rule depends upon ongoing deceptions and lies. Ultimately, then, we cannot see him as the foundation and the basis of truth. We have a right to question everything they done put out. Black power.
Black power. Sure.
It is pro-African to do that. Come on, baby.
And this nigga's gonna say why? Because everything the white man has created, he's used to facilitate his control over the world. And even that science is subjected to his racist theory on how the world should be controlled. And if he can't racially dominate a planet, he'd rather blow it up.
Yeah.
So even that theory has to be questioned, because to some extent it's going to be used to rationalize, defend, protect, or reason his reason, why he should be in power and why we should be subjected to dominance. Even that Bible. So why, if the Bible, if God's word is racist, nigga, the science gonna be racist. Come on, man.
Yes.
The motherfuckers working from a paradigm to try to make us all into see, because like if God didn't create you, then you ain't nothing but a motherfucking animal who worthy of the most advanced people are using you up. They're working it from a simple motherfucking simple way, making it real simple for them. And I'm still not convinced. I got all types of problems with all that.
They're trying to keep our people in the illusion of inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to admit that they are slaves, that slavery has never ended because it requires you to do something.
Right. That's true, sis.
And they don't want you to know that they're different than us. Because they don't want you to know that they... look, Neanderthal is a chimp. I don't know what the fuck that's some type of chimp. So now this chimp, they're saying that they got some type of ape in them or whatever, and they don't want to claim that they different. They say, well, look, even though we got ape in us, that still only makes us just so much different than y'all. But that little bit is a lot when we dealing with DNA, when we dealing with, genetic, 1% is a lot.
That's what trick knowledge right there. And that's what it goes to the last time because, okay, they'll say, listen to Europeans, you got to listen to them. They say on one hand, the DNA structure between the ape and a human being or a monkey and a human being are very similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the DNA structure. But then the European also tells you that the human and that the flesh of a human being is consistent of a pig.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm confused now. You heard this before, right? When niggas go to school for tattooing and shit, they use pig skin.
When you training,
But a butcher will tell you, you know, and he'll admit that nigga cut up a human body by saying that. But yeah, motherfucker tell you that, you know, the pig's flesh is the close to that of a man. But would you say niggas came from pigs based off that?
Okay.
No, if you saying that though, Mr. Rob, that's true. They use some pigs like that. Like if you training, like if you training using like knives and stuff like that and swords, that's what you use, a pig, because it's just like a human body.
Ooh. Now he got me thinking. Okay. And no, real talk. Insulin.
Mhm.
Human insulin, artificial insulin, most of it comes from the pig.
Yes,
now, if we so closely related, if I came from the primate, why are we not using the primates' biology, physical biology, or DNA to make insulin? Why are we using the damn pig?
Exactly. Because two different species. Listen how they even. Okay. Anybody have children on the line?
Black Power.
Yes,
okay.
Black Power.
Did you and your mate hybridize and make y'all children?
Oh no.
No.
Hell to the no.
Okay, I use this last. Let niggas don't even catch on what I'm saying. Okay, a hybrid is what?
Two species, two separate species.
Yeah.
Mixing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
Now,
if we all the same and we all come from the same common ancestor in Africa, why do Europeans, the people who created this science, why do they say in Europe 30,000 years ago you had modern humans, which are Africans, and then you had Neanderthals, who weren't fully developed humans yet, whatever the fuck that is, and that these motherfuckers hybridized and produced what we know today as white people?
Mm-hmm.
You know what a liger is?
A liger, yeah, tiger and a lion.
Right. Do you know they can only produce that in the lab?
Yeah. That's
because
right.
species don't crossbreed.
That's right. Absolutely.
And you know the proof of that? If these niggas really study evolution, natural selection governs the finesse of any species. So if you notice, for example, a mule is the same thing, right, brother? Born a mule?
Mm-hmm.
You have to create a mule, right? A donkey and a horse make a mule, right?
Or
vice versa. A horse and a donkey make a mule.
Make a mule, yeah.
It's artificially done, artificially inseminated. And the result of that is sterile. Ligers are sterile. Why? It's an abomination.
Yes.
Nature didn't create it, so nature won't allow it to reproduce.
You got it. In order for it to be hybridized, you have to genetically manipulate it. It has to be genetically modified to be able to, for hybridization to happen, and for it not to be, and for it to still be unsterile, or for it to still be able to produce babies, it has to be genetic manipulation. And that is proven by how they got those cats that glow in the dark when they put those they genetically modified them.
Right. Gave them a fucking gene, an octopus gene and some cats, and the cats glow at night.
Yeah.
That's a shame. That's really a shame, boy.
And the cats can have babies. And they did the same thing with some goats. They did some goats like that. They put spider DNA in them, so when they have milk, the milk can be spun into silk, and they can have babies. But you can never take a spider and a goddamn goat and make them have sex. And now they have that DNA. So anytime you see a species that has a separate species DNA within inside of it, and it can still produce through the science that we can see right now, that we have to look at that and say somebody genetically modified some shit.
And you know what they use for that? Their prized possession. The reason why they were able to study and find so much, the stem cells of black women. They have a fascination with embryonic fluid.
They do.
I'm watching a program the other day on testosterone levels, and they're trying to determine how high testosterone levels in children while they're in the womb. So they're taking samples of embryonic fluid.
That's shit. Oh, this is. Oh man.
And brother, let's build on it. What produces the glands, and what is the key component that is involved in these hormones? It is melanin.
Yes.
These glands are formed in the 28th hour of gestation and fertilization, right? The neural crust is formed for the ectoderm. The ectoderm is a highly melanated tube. It is from that the neural tube, or the neural crest tube is formed, which forms the brain and the spinal column. The first two things form in the embryonic state. It is our content of melanin that makes us separate and unequal.
Yeah. And because of that potential in their melanin content, like you said, which is basically living carbon, okay, to give you a visualization of what this shit is. Remember Spider-Man when he got in contact with that alien symbiote and it was all black? It was able to enhance his powers.
Oh yeah,
enhance his aggression. That's melanin, right?
Yeah,
now, what Europeans have been able to do is because melanin is potential to survive, and because nature provides it, it has a duration life outside the human body that Europeans have found out in the motherfucking test tube. Meaning they've been able to take our genes and isolate them in a test tube environment and regrow ears.
Yeah.
Regrow organs.
Yeah. Just pretty much calling things. Yeah.
But we're the center at this science. So when they say y'all need to give up on your own ways, the Europeans advancing, he ain't been able to advance without us.
Exactly. He cannot attain in life. We sustain this life, and in order for him to attain a life, he has to come through us. That's exactly right.
And like Dr. Clark said, the reason why they tie into so much that's ours is because that's their lease on life. And the best misery we can inflict on them is to leave them in their misery. That's the best thing we can do them. That's why by us even including ourselves, we save the society, because they go back to what I said earlier. The white child benefits double from being around your child, while your child gets stunt double by being around a white child. But they benefit from us saving their culture many times in history. That's why we leave all this shit the fuck alone.
Yeah.
Let them fix their own social problems. Let them explain evolution, my nigga.
Dr. Diop said in an interview, in an interview, and I'm looking at it here, 1976 issue of Black Books Bulletin, where he stated there is absolutely no doubt the white race, which appeared for the first time during the Upper Paleolithic, around 20,000 BC, was the product of a processed depigmentation. Further, Dr. Diop informed us that much later the whites commenced their migratory movement towards the southern areas around 1500 BC. Therefore, it should not be surprising that deep within the historic and current mythology and symbolism of Western civilization and culture, white supremacy system, that culture, is evidence to strongly support the above outlined mode of origins as that actually traversed by the global albino white collective. Yep, that's what he said. And that can be found in the ISIS papers by Dr. Francis Chess Wilson. That interview with Dr. Diop, he said that. Chapter 1. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Oh, Brother B, anybody got any questions?
Yeah, that's why I open up the line. If anybody had any questions, I'll open the line. There's some noise in the background when I open them up. I gotta refresh my browser real fast, but there's a couple more before mine. Brother Rahi Rule, Brother Torres, y'all out there? Are y'all out there? Yo, Black Power.
Black Power. Black Power.
Power family.
You got anything y'all want to add on to the conversation? Any comments?
Shit, I'm on the slave. I'm gonna just give a super duper black flesh to my main the student brother Minkarah. You feel me? Black power to the God. You know I love you, brother. Black power, man.
Black Power, brother.
Yeah, I think that's the brother Minkarah, brother B, and Goddess Camilla and Sister Kaba gave an excellent breakdown tonight. And then, I'm a student at the feet tonight, so I'm just listening. You know what I'm saying? I'll say my final comment for the final statement of the night. For Black Power to the family. Y'all doing y'all thing, most definitely.
Black Power, King.
Black Power, Black Power.
Yeah, no doubt on that. Y'all holding it down. This ain't my particular field to get down, so I'm in the black shadows, baby.
Best place to be, King. All things black.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I have to throw out there, too. Defensive positions. We've been trained a lot of times to defend a lot of ideologies, a lot of religions, a lot of social programs that oftentimes ain't in best interest for us. So when niggas is, giving information and so forth, don't be quick to get on the defensive, hear the shit out. Because if the shit precedes you, or what's that shit that the trader, what the trader nigga, Ray Hagen's be using, the circle analogy, right? Here's my thinking. If I can understand some on my side, my circumference, I can just deal with it. I don't want to use that, line for line, word for word, but because in America we weren't allowed to read, we gotta know that we still playing catch up. And we just not getting ahead of what the fuck a lot of European writers are really saying. Before you take a position on what they're truthful or not, know that their filter of interpretation is coming from a racist ideology. That's it.
And, Brother Maker probably add on to that, I listened to Baba Automatic on having a speech one time, I believe. I believe it was on politics. Can't recollect the exact name of the speech right at the moment. One of the things that he was speaking on, as he was saying about his learning to read, he was like, we're busy right now. We're still trying to figure out what they did to us during the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. We're still trying to figure this stuff out. While they done moved on to what they going to be doing in 2050. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely, I think at this time we might have moved ahead on the scale right now, but it's still a good analogy to look at where we're at as the people, how we have a lot to rediscover about ourselves. You know what I mean? I feel good though as the people, like I said, man, I always know that we ain't been free for 50 years. And I still don't consider us free. But I'm saying that it's semblance or some way to try to move around since 1965. If y'all want to give us a date on freedom. And if it's 2 generations, not even, 30 plus 20, to go through it, and we have the point that we at right now, man. Be before we assume.
Mm-hmm. And just because we behind about 100 years or so in information, probably 200 years. But that don't mean we should give up. Because look how fast we caught up.
Right.
We've changed the literature.
Mm-hmm. Even that, that's what I'm saying. Look how fast we caught up. Look, they had to destroy us during the 1930s, that early 20th century, 1910, 1920, when they started to destroy our infrastructure that we built up, because they could see that within 50 years of that time, how we had excelled as a nation. You know what I'm saying? Inside of a nation, so that now we see that we're back at this same type of sentiment. 100 years later, looking at a different type of situation where now we are back into building what we once had, but now we have to build it with a semblance of militarization. Everything survives now.
What?
All right. And that's something we should take from our ancestors, Brother B. Our ancestors were successful at building pyramids because they were able to plan for the future. You see what I'm saying? That's when Europeans pass judgment on our organizations, they think in terms of capacity. What will these motherfuckers be in the next 2 or 3 years? Oh, hell no. See, they look at projection. They projecting probability in the future. That's where, our strength lay. You know what I'm saying? Especially when we dedicate ourselves to something that's long term. Oh, we're going to be around for a long motherfucking time, digging in the cracker's chest every chance we get. Right. And pointing out you neo-colonialist ass niggas.
Shay.
So, for all those who wonder why we question, that's why we question. That's why we question anything and everything that is given to us by the academic Jewish mind, the Jewish academic mind. We know you not. And don't think, and just because we know that we still grouping all y'all together.
I can see it. That's right. That's right, Brother Ball.
Y'all all go with the lie together.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's up? You know something, Brother B? You got a good ass point.
Mm-hmm.
You know why Jews wage war on black people? Because the Jew has been able to warp every other people's written history. And the one motherfucker, whether that motherfucker is sleeping or waking up, is able to teach beyond that is the African. So if you understand what I'm saying, look at it like this: Jews oversee all white. They oversee all white curriculum. So while Jews who think they empower say, let the niggas get it, let the Black Studies program go into place. Yeah, no problem with it. Get a niggas Black Studies program. The Jew find out about it, and he's the one who is more, because he sees the political implications by giving that power to the African. You see the point I'm making?
Right.
The Jew don't want the African hanging around the white man, anybody else, because the Jew knows the African who wakes up and knows his history, he'll have far more of an impact, and it'll be at a faster rate than any other school. Against that.
That is true. Yeah, and I would go to add what Chancellor Williams wrote in his book, and I'm gonna read it right here in the section "White Scholars as Authorities." He said, much of the history of Africa has been written by anthropologists. They have written it within the theoretical framework of their own ethnology, and historians and others have relied almost entirely on their classification of peoples. The usual claim that the history is a science is made despite the amount of pure guessing that characterizes its conclusions. Racism is so obvious in most of the anthropological finds that one may wonder how, if they hope to maintain the fiction of being scientific, it can escape their notice. It has been suggested that their bias does not, in fact, go unnoticed, but that they are so certain of the favorable reception by the white audience to which they address themselves that what others outside of that world think is a matter of consequence. Black power.
Black power. And now we got these very same people talking about reading Dr. Chancellor Williams' work. Am I lying about that?
No.
Do we not got black neo-colonialists? Another master teacher shoulder you're standing on, but yet contradicting the very thing he's saying.
Nah, say it ain't so. Say it ain't so, L. Bistro. Say that ain't L. Bistro Bible right there that you just answered.
And black power to the queen for reading that for the family.
Black power, queen. You know, sister. It is what it is. We have to go to the sources. We have to, what would we be if we didn't think outside of the box? We have to think outside of the box. We can't just take something and on the contrary say, oh, well, it's coming from my brother, so yeah, it must be true. We think and we rationalize and we analyze these things. We need to research it. And when it comes down to empirical evidence, we have to look for that ourselves. We have to look outside of that. We can't just accept it. We've done that already. We've accepted everything that was given to us. White supremacy was given to us, and it was forced on us. And then when we came to a point of the no, we still just accepted it. We just accepted it, because it burns me up to see so many people saying, oh, we're going to forgive this guy for going to church and killing all these people. It hurts me to see that, because you can't even mourn the loss of your of your family member because you're so quick to say, I gotta forgive them. So white supremacy really has us blinded. So we must look. We must seek. We seek and we will find. But if we just lie dormant, there's nothing. We'll get nothing.
All right.
Like that.
Yes, though, sister. I say yes, though. That was the typical response from a Christian. I forgive the individual. I don't get upset. That's why I get upset when I hear it, because their comments is that of maintaining the integrity of what it is to being Christian despite this evil atrocity. But and I don't get upset either, because I know the ploy of politics. I know Europeans can get up there and and then wage war on them at the same time. So, it's really up to us to stay vigilant and stay
stay basically on their ass in light of truth, because that's the only thing we have. Even though they in power, influence and charisma is all they sign right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they look for charismatic poor people who can better, if you would think this white man in power, he got all this shit. Why he need a motherfucking house nigga to speak for him?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And a lot of I've heard some people, not very few, mention Dr. King's work. Dr. King, Feet on the Ground is the first show I heard that mentioned Dr. King's work, and they want to disparage it because Dr. King really brings it home about what makes us separate and are equal. That melanin, right? Mm-hmm. Comes from carbon, the key atom in all life, right? It is our black brain. It is our higher concentration, and that African brain, right, that makes us different. The higher concentration of it in our skin. They want to say it's just the skin. Everybody got melanin. Okay. Well, Dr. Richard King is an actual scientist, and he came under the he came under Dr. Ben. As Dr. Ben had said in the lecture, it was Dr. Richard King who was the one who encouraged him to take our people back every year to Kemet and educate them. Just want to throw that out there.
Black
okay.
Power. Yeah.
Black Power.
Yeah.
The brother says in his work, dealing with the early bastula, which is early stage of fertilization, that it contains 3 layers: the outer ectoderm, an inner layer, endoderm, and mesoderm. Every part of the body has its origin in one of these 3 layers of cells. The outer layer of the ectoderm contains melanin throughout its outermost layer. By the 28th hour after conception, fertilization of the female egg, the ectoderm has begun to invaginate into the interior of the cluster of early fetal cells to form a long tube. Critically, this neural tube develops into the spinal cord, the end of the tube, the neural crest midpoint, the brain, and cells along its length evolve into melanocytes, and all of the endocrine glands, pineal, pituitary, mast cells, hypothalamus, thyroid, parathyroid, pancreas, and many other glands found in the stomach, intestine, lungs, and intestinal tract. But we want to... I'm sorry, King. Go ahead, King. That's a good reference. What is Sister Camille saying right there? The fact that we have a higher content of melanin means, listen what she said, the fact that we have a different content of melanin, we have a totally different nervous system from that of Europeans. They say the skin is the second nervous system in the human body. Anybody ever heard that before?
Ashe. And the largest organ.
And it's the largest organ on the body, right? If we have a higher content of melanin, that means that our nervous, like European, when you look at their genetic makeup, like a lot of niggas who call themselves geneticists don't even go into that. They have the most nervous system problems of any other people on the planet. All their disorders stem from nervousness issues. One thing they've been able to do is synthetically create melatonin. First thing psychologists say is that individuals who suffer from mental disorders don't suffer from a lack of sleep. You heard this before, right?
Ashe.
So they've been able to synthetically create melatonin. Melatonin, that's what it's called, right?
Melatonin.
A sleeping aid. Anybody ever seen, what the fuck was that movie called? Fight Club?
I didn't watch it.
An old movie where the individual not only was he had insomnia, but he also had a job where he was flying here, flying there, gaining an hour, losing an hour. And you know that old saying goes, if you in Rome live like the Romans, but if you wake up somewhere often enough, are you a different person? This cracker was getting an hour of sleep a day and create a whole different personality. You look at some of the drugs that's on the market right now, methamphetamine, a drug that's really created by Hitler. He can take credit for that. Sleeps is null and void. Motherfucker be up weeks, looking like zombies around this motherfucker. See what I'm saying? You are at your melon can function at the highest and conscious peak in your sleep. And American society will openly tell you that sleep is $1 billion business. Huh? $2,500 beds. All type of herbs just to have a motherfucker help them get a good night rest. When naturally, shit, nigga, you can sleep on the floor and nigga can have a pallet on the floor and nigga get the best sleep in your life at your mama house somewhere. You got niggas paranoid who got condos and shit in white neighborhoods and can't even sleep at night. I know why you can't sleep at night. You're surrounded by the enemy.
Okay. Black Power.
And every time they come to the hood, they say, I feel so safe in the hood. I bet you do. You sleep like a baby on my couch. You got that big-ass house upstate with his kinfolk, you know what I'm saying, with the crackers up there in the North Beverly Hills somewhere, but that nigga stay at my house. Yeah. He get his best way because you sleep. Look. But look what animals do to get a good night rest. Protection, right? Birds, fish, them motherfuckers sleep with one eye open. Because when you sleep, you are at the most vulnerable position, right?
Okay.
So it's fair to say psychologically you get your best sleep and where you feel secure at. And you feel best secure somewhere near your mother, right?
Mm-hmm. Very thought out. Well thought
now,
out.
I'm glad the brother mentioned the nervous system, nerve cells, okay? Because, and one more thing I want to say about Dr. Richard King for all the apologists of the cracker beats, all of those who think we too black over here. He's citing, by the way, he's a scientist, MD. He's citing cracker bee scientists that have been studying melanin for decades, unbeknownst to us, okay? Thus, the melanocyte is a modified nerve cell that, in terms of structure, will resemble a nerve cell. And I implore everybody to please see this for yourself, really, because it is an amazing thing to see how they are identical, damn near, in appearance, with the dendrite, axon, cellular shape. Okay? The melanocyte is an example of a nerve that conveys information through long-distance blood hormone messengers, as compared to short-range nerve neurotransmitters that are so typical of electrical forms, information transferred by the nerves. Now, melanocytes, though found in the skin, again, originate embryonically from the neural crest, an early pre-fetal structure, which later evolves into the brain and later migrates into skin sites. Want to add another thing, because they've been testing melanin. They found melanin has a crazy memory. They found out that of its electrical field properties, of changing its conductivity, how it can withstand high temperatures of heat. Okay, that the memory state is reversible. Okay, and it's destroyed by heat above 110 Celsius. But the other interesting thing about melanin that you're not going to be told, another example of melanin's role in memory pool operation can be seen in the report that DNA itself, a key biological blueprint for life, has been found to be directly linked to melanin granules. Citing a cracker, Schneider, 1975.
Hey,
I'm putting it out there. Check his work. Check his work.
Yeah.
Tell us it ain't got nothing. Melanin, just skin. We all the same, sister.
No, we're not. Yeah, we different. We are different.
Like we can't look at each other and just tell we different. Damn that. You just look at each other. They smell different. What do you smell? They smell like soap. And they say their blood is sulfur-based. If it's sulfur-based blood, they smell like soap.
Right. So they'll fool you with, okay, pigs have hearts, right?
I said.
Pig got brain, pig got lungs. Well, that motherfucker ain't human.
Mm.
So, you know, they'll what they compare and to get you to accept is two different things. You look at this and hold on, that shit, But the thing is to put you on defensive, though. You just defending shit and not even, you know, fuck that shit, nigga. We finna question this shit because everything been used for against black people. My money been used against me, nigga. When I had too much money, when I didn't have enough money, when I was down, I was ignorant. That shit was held against me, nigga. You know what I'm saying? We best to question anything in American society. Shit, that's why they hate to see us coming. They turn flush in the face. Oh shit, here come this nigga. Yeah, you know they have to accommodate us because we know them, especially the Negro. We talk about the Negro in America. Talk about the Negro in America because we've been dealing with the worst European, the one who can't go back home. You'll never hear Brits say, you bloody African, go back home. Hell no, that's the motherfucking poor white trash of America. Nigga, go back home. Nigga, he can't go back to Europe. That's what he's telling you.
Okay. Never saw it looked at that way, King. Black Power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know they just drag society. You know, England let out their jails and send them over here. Disconnected.
Well, my sisters and brothers, this is what I want to do. I want to leave you all with the lasting quote from Tampa Williams, and I know we'll definitely do this again. I have to step away from the phone now, but this has been a great bill. I mean, you know, the DNA, Sister Queen Warrior, Camille, the synapses in my mind are everywhere right now. I don't need no sleep. I need to read or something to that effect. But I do have to step away, and I want to tell y'all this has been a great bill, great dialogue, and whenever we're thinking, you know, we're progressing. You know, we got to think when we're progressing. So I want to leave y'all with this, and I'm gonna say, and this comes from Dr. Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization. He says, the simple truth is that the African people in the United States and throughout the world are not and never have been separatists. In fact, perhaps this has been their weakness. They have never really hated the whites, and they do not really hate whites now. What is taken for hatred when applied to blacks is their reaction against being hated, rejected, and oppressed. And the thinking whites know this very well. When they cry racism in reverse, or reverse discrimination and reverse segregation, they are saying, in fact, that only we whites may discriminate or segregate, but not you blacks. So, and I'll go over to what is entailed in Dr. Francis Tress Welson's book, Nearly Fuller Jr. in 1971. He said, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. And with that, my sister and brothers, I want to say black power to you all. And this has been a great bill. Great bill.
Black power to you, Queen. You know you feet on the ground.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate a brilliant African mind. And thank you for dropping science on us. And Queen, you know, definitely, you feet on the ground. This is where we need you at.
Yes,
Black power.
Black power to y'all, my king, my queens. And we will do this again. We will. Sister Fallen in a little trance right now. I think I need to rest up. I've been up real early, but I'm going to tell y'all I do appreciate this. I just got to get up real early in the morning. That's all that's going on right now. Because I could do this all night, you know. I mean, when your feet are on the ground, that's where they need to be at. And you're in a good position to keep the crack off your back. That's what come here.
Black power.
You're in the best position to keep them up off your back. So feet on the ground. So peace and love to you all.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
And to you too, Queen. Peace and love.
All right.
Black power.
Peace.
Black power.
Right, and just like Brother Minkara, a sister with them letters behind the name. So what you got for that now?
Asking African questions. We're African minds. But we know we ain't all our African minds because we ain't got no letters. We come to these conclusions a long time ago. We won't be swayed. This ain't time to be swayed. See, this is the thing about this new African paradigm. We'd rather just leave all your shit alone and just create our own shit. See, we at that point. And we have to be at that point because we have to take heed to where the youth are at. Like Brother Minkara said earlier, man, the youth look at the Bible like a comic book. So they looking at the signs. Listen, man, they looking at the signs like that shit that they just making up. For whatever they doing, they try to kill us with it anyway. It don't make no fucking difference. So if y'all can figure out some shit that ain't gonna kill us, then talk to us about that. Anything else? We just talk.
Ashe.
Ashe.
With that being said, Brother Minkara, you ready to end out? I know you got a piece from Dr. Amos Wilson that you want to end with. Something to throw in.
I think the sister did well with that ending quote right there from Chancellor Williams. Man, if you don't know nothing about white supremacy, man, you ain't gonna know too much. You know, you ain't gonna really know the full projection and the full extent of white power, man. And how far that white hand touch everything and it's interpreted. And how sometimes the smallest, the one nigga in the little village who's speaking truth can do more damage than a nigga who think he running something in some time.
Mm-hmm.
Where your loyalties lay at. What's the role of the black media? Is it one of ethics or is it one of race loyalty? I think it's one of race loyalty, and it got to come with ethics behind that. Mm-hmm. So just like white media makes it their position to make sure that they don't show too much of nothing negative image in terms of white people, we have to make sure as black media outlets we do the same thing. Black power.
Black power.
Black power. Brother Hey, if you want, a couple parting words,
Black power, can you hear me? Or is my background giving a lot of feedback?
Well, there's some feedback back there, but go on,
Black power. I just want to say a few things. First thing is, I appreciate the show tonight. This is the kind of topics and this is the discussion that needs to not just be going on here, but needs to be going on inside of every black community worldwide. And it's things like this that's going to create the action to make people get off their ass and put their best foot forward and get out there for a BB Fahodie. With that being said, I woke up this morning being very disappointed, feeling disappointed in our people due to the fact that our people can get off their ass and go stand on a street corner and hold a sign and sit there and yell out and put all that voice power and energy over a piece of cloth, over a Confederate flag. But you can't put that same voice power and energy into the liberation of our people. So, that took me for a little ride of anger for the day. And as I look at situations like that, it takes me to other situations dealing with so-called leaders or so-called individuals that give themselves titles of power, that our people put their time, energy, and develop a passion towards the wrong people. Is all I'm going to say, yo. Before you fall in love with somebody chasing a black power spotlight, because all they is, they are no different than an entertainer on TV. They're no different than your favorite rap artist. They're no different than your favorite producer, your favorite actor, your favorite athlete. I'm going to say that when you look at certain individuals, before you give them all your time and your passion, to sit there and really analyze them and see where they really stand. Now, it may take time. Some can do it on site. Some can do it overnight. Some, it might take a little bit longer than others. But after you do that, don't let their actions discourage you, especially if somebody's just recently waking you up. You're going to meet some things in life that's going to break your heart, and you're going to meet some people that's going to, that when you meet them, they're not going to fulfill the shoes or standards that you place them in. So with that being said, only thing that you can do is do you and do what you do the best that you can. We are at odds with ourselves as a people. I realize that this is a situation that's not going to change. But all we can do is work with what we got, and those that's willing to put their best foot forward and get out here and fight. So whatever your position is, and it's a BB for Hodier, be a master of your craft in that position. Stand on your square and put up the best fight of your life. And let's see this war. Let's see this war and its victory through. And after the war and the victory has been won, then we can sit and we can be entertained by the millions of shenanigans that go on that's plagued, through our communities. All our differences or whatnot, after the war is over and the war is won, if you still want to have them differences amongst each other, we can deal with them then. But right now, we got a common enemy, and whether or not, if you acknowledge that that enemy is there or not, or that America is built on racism, and that every continent and every piece of land on the greatness of Mother Earth, you know what I'm saying, has been stolen and occupied by this parasitic cave vulture, and that the only way that we are going to live at any point in time, whether if it's in our time period or in future generations' time period in peace, is to do what we got to do and eliminate this beast. So with that being said, the words of the sister that I heard her speak the other night is words that move me and touch me, and that's going to flow through my veins for a minute. I'm going to have a good, Black African high on that. This is something that I strive for, and I want to hear if it's one person or if it's a million or a million of our brothers and sisters get that same statement that sister gave tonight, then I know that our hard works and efforts and everything that we do is on the right path. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have so many people going back through our archives, then going on their platforms and repeating verbatim, word for word, everything that we said like they came up with it. So I know that what we're doing is right, and for all those that try to step on our feet over here, I got something ill to say. Hey, there ain't nothing I can do about that if you look at us, and the reflection that you see back isn't the reflection that you set for yourself. So with that being said, let's move forward. Get this a BB for Hodier cracking. And that's my last of final words for the night, family. Black Power.
Black
Power.
Black Power.
Black Power. What? Let's see, brother, everybody, Brother Little, I wanted Sister Camille to go ahead and drop her jewels, and then let Brother Mick, when Brother Mick already went, let Sister Camille go and drop her jewels, then I'll go ahead and end the show on now.
Well, family, I just want to remind the family members that two of our greatest historians that a lot of people cite did not have college degrees. Dr. Clark, John G. Jackson. Now, the thing that makes me so proud of our brother Mikara, who does have a degree in anthropology, who is a scientist, is that he is a scientist bred from an African-centered perspective. And the thing that touched me the most is that when this king, when this god went to get that paper, he is wrapped around his red, black, and green. It's on display for all to see. Now, how many of our people are bold enough to do that? That shows our king's love for our people, and that his work and that his dedication is for our Bibi Fahodier. Lastly, death to all cracker beasts, and this racist cracker beast society must fall. Black power.
Black power. Thank you, sir.
Black power, Brother Lily, you got anything you want to close out with?